Just a note concerning the agenda, I'm going to move the police recognition up after the roll call. And following, then we will follow the rest of the agenda going down. We've got great people in here. It's nice to have all of you here, and I appreciate all the work that you do. Roll call.
Parker.
Here.
Miscelinich.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Zittergruen.
Here.
Chisel.
Here.
Whittle.
Here.
Neal.
Here.
Okay, police recognition. Have Chief time.
Tonight we're going to recognize some officers and deputies, folks in law enforcement that went above and beyond the call of duty way back in April. So I want to start this evening off with a quote. Not really sure who said it, but I know that I've heard it. When the alarm sounds, our hearts don't race, they find their purpose. What we are about to share with you in just a moment is some video footage captured on Sergeant Yitzen's body camera the night of April 20th, 2025, about 11:41 p.m. On this night, that alarm sounded. At about 11:37 p.m., an alarm company contacted dispatch regarding a medical alarm of a woman advising her house was filling with smoke and she was struggling to breathe. The alarm company was unsure if the caller was able to get out of the house. The men and women of the Decorah Police Department immediately responded to this call when dispatched, as did the Winneshiek County Sheriff's Office and the Decorah Fire Department. Now, as much fun as police officers make about firefighters, and we're going to get back to that here in just a minute, we are truly brothers and sisters when duty calls. As Decorah police officers arrived on scene, they could see the significance of what they were responding to and what they were facing. The following video has been edited in the name of time to make it shareable, and in the name of restraint, as rescue is not always delicate. There are aspects of the video that have not been edited, such as the audio. You will hear some profanity. I want to warn you in advance. Know that this is boots on the ground, in the moment, life and death emergency response, and as stated, it is not always pretty. Travis, if you would.
All right, so thank you, Chief Time, for pointing that out. Quick disclaimer, full disclaimer to read. So the following body-worn camera footage contains scenes of an active fire emergency and may include graphic images and intense situations. Viewers may also hear crude or strong language that occurred in the course of an emergency response. This footage is being shared for the purpose of transparency, education, public awareness. Viewer discretion is advised. Audio on this, Chopper? Here.
out of there, ma'am. I don't know how you can breathe in there. Do you know what's on fire?
No. My oxygen O2 thing started beeping, and then started beeping more, and then
All right, what we're going to do,
power went out.
we're going to get you on this cot and get you away from this house. We're going to get that fire put out, okay?
Yeah, I don't know where it's at.
If we put her on the cot and wheel her away from here, and then we'll wheel her over to the rig.
Just lower her down. Let's get her ass out of here.
All right, somebody grab her legs. We're going to go underneath your arms here, Barb. All right, here we go.
Just spin the cot.
Well,
Spin it. Or spin her.
Yep. Don't drop her. All right, there you go. All right, let's wheel her out of here.
Get her up a little bit.
As you can see, time is of the essence in calls like these. What we edited out were the multiple window breaks, attempts to make contact, attempts to enter through another doorway, and the smoke was so intense. From the first ring of the telephone in the communications center to the dispatch of the call to police and fire, about 2 minutes transpired. Within 2 minutes of being dispatched, officers arrived on scene. In that time, the smoke had become so thick, officers could not enter the home to rescue that victim, though many attempts were made. The frustration is palpable when officers cannot see or breathe, yet are determined to rescue this victim. Within about 6 minutes of arriving on scene, through teamwork with the Decorah police officers and the Winnebago County deputies, the victim was removed from that house through a bedroom window and survived. Our hearts don't race, they find their purpose. Mahatma Gandhi professed the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And Nelson Mandela, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. This evening, we recognize the service, courage, determination, and triumph of those 3 Decorah police officers and the 3 Winnebago County deputies involved in this life-saving event. Will Officer Tara Mathis, Officer Chris McClellan, and Sergeant Adam Yetzen come forward, along with Deputy Trevor Thomas, Deputy Lance Peters, and Deputy Fallon Cassidy. It is incredibly important to me, especially in crazy times such as these, that we collectively take the time to acknowledge the good works that the men and women in uniform do regularly, and the sacrifice that they are willing to make on any given day, on any given shift. These calls for service affect the officers and their families as well. So to the families of these officers and deputies, I see you, we see you, and we thank you for supporting your officers and deputies that make the work that they do in our community so valuable. For you 6 people up here, I'm honored to present you with this award and life-saving uniform bar, recognizing the actions that you took the night of April 20th, 2025. The award reads, recognizing you as a life-saving hero who inspires us all through your acts of courage and compassion, when on April 20th, 2025, your actions showed bravery and determination in adverse conditions that resulted in a human life being saved during a house fire. We honor your exceptional courage and commitment to public safety. As far as policing, I say to all of you, never forget why you started, never forget why you stay, and never forget the value of your service. This save is carried by Winnebago County 911 Communications, Decorah Police Department, Winnebago County Sheriff's Office, specifically Deputy Lance Peters, Deputy Fallon Cassidy, and Deputy Trevor Thomas, and the Winnebago County Ambulance Service. Every agency and every person critical in the role that they filled that night. And now, back to the normal ribbing between police and fire, you know, police officers, because firefighters need heroes too. And, well, if we're gonna be honest, firefighters, because police officers need heroes as well. Both ring true, and you all have proven that the value of dedicated professionals working together can and does change lives. Let me present you with your awards. The good works that these people did on this day do not surprise me. It is the work that they do every day, regularly, while patrolling for the city of Decorah and within Winnebago County. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Tyne. Thank you, Public Safety. Those have been recognized. We appreciate your work. Okay, moving along, we will go to public comment. Now is the time for anybody who wishes to address. Well, we'll wait just a couple minutes before they all walk out.
I can't see it.
Okay, those people that want to address the council may come forth, come up to the podium, state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes to share. Thank you, Daniel.
Danielle Dotsenrod, 2136 Horn Hollow, Decorah. I'm one of the 2 Winnebago County Saddle Club representatives. I see on the agenda tonight that number 8 is confirmation of the trails already approved by Parks and Rec. Just to be clear, that would be our preferred outcome. If not, the Saddle Club does not agree with the 5 of 8, and we support the proposal brought forth by City Council Member Randy Chisel at the June 30th meeting, and would like Van Peenan Park trails to be used in accordance with the Van Peenan donor wishes, allowing walking, horseback riding, backpacking, and simple camping. We will then agree not to pursue access to any additional city trails, including the remainder of the trails we've responsibly ridden for over 50 years. In your packet, you find a Backcountry Horsemen Association letter of support. The BCHA is the only national equestrian group that specializes in trails. The DNR has hired them to make safety videos. They also work off of this USDA Forest Service equestrian guidebook that was given to the mayor last week. I can't find anywhere in this book that mentions a maximum of 4 riders. I did what Brian Furman said and I Googled it, and I can't find it in Google either. In fact, it actually says the opposite. It says there isn't a specific maximum number of equestrian riders mandated by law for shared trails. There is an equivalent guide for mountain biking trail standards that we can use to ensure all user groups are being treated fairly and equally on the trails. I'd like to give a recap of the Parks and Rec Board activity in 2005, supported by board minutes. Bikers asked permission to enter Van Peenan Park. The Park and Rec Board said they must first get written permission from Dr. Van Peenan, and then they wanted the deed amended before bikes would be allowed. When asked, Dr. Van Peenan's response spelled out numerous reasons it went against donor wishes, which you will find in your packet. Because they didn't get a clear blessing, they sent his response to the city attorney for review, which you will also find in your packet. Pay special attention to page 2, paragraph 2, where the attorney says, in reviewing Dr. Van Peenan's response, he may not have an objection if there's no damaging of the environment, we can control overuse and not add additional trails, all of which has happened. Please take a look at the next page. There's a screenshot of a video that we have of water flowing down public television trail. That is a trail that board minutes prove was created by bikers that horses do not have access to. Separating equestrian and mountain biking trails solves for not only safety issues, but numerous points of conflict. Not to mention it honors the donor's wishes. We find this to be a very reasonable resolution. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to address the council at this time?
My name is Tom Mossman. I live at 1513 Laurel Drive. First of all, I want to thank all the fire department and police and sheriff officials for all their great work as always. So I'm here to comment on the trail use. Hasn't been any trouble with horseback riding being on the park trails until the mountain bikers and DHPT came into the parks. Horse people have created and rode the park trails for 50+ years. Now, since mountain bikers and DHP have been doing everything they can to not allow horses on the trails, I believe is to take the real focus away from the damage bikers are causing to the parks and the disruption of nature. Even as important, if not more, is the fact that Van Penen Park was donated to the city from the Van Penens, with deed special covenants to run with the land, stated as follows: shall be left in a state of nature as a wildlife preserve with facilities only for walking, horseback riding, backpacking, including simple camping. Also, the letter from John Van Penen that was written to the park staff 19.5 years ago concluded saying, I think the park is already taking just about all the use it can safely tolerate and am reluctant to agree to more. A park board member who is a mountain biker and DHPT stated he would be very angry if he had to repair any damage to a trail if a horse would cause it. Could you imagine the anger and the frustration the Van Penens would have now with the bikers going against everything that was agreed on with their generous gift? I truly believe it is the City of Decorah's moral and ethical responsibility to abide by the agreement made with the Van Penens. Talking about anger, put yourselves in our place as horse riders and try to cope with all the false statements against us, and now this whole year being told we cannot be on the trails yet. While the bikers got to continue to use it as if nothing ever happened. At this point, I think the best solution is to have no mountain bikers in Van Penen Park and allow horseback riders in immediately. Every person who has approached me about the bikers being allowed in Van Penen Park when it was deeded over for horseback riding are very upset and do not understand why or how bikers were allowed in there in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Hi, Jess Ryerson. I live at 1012 River Street in Decorah. I'd like to thank you for pointing out in the last meeting the difference between horses and bikes. If we're talking about how much a horse weighs with a rider, that's 1,250 pounds. 4 horses is going to be 5,000 pounds. That's a ton and a half, equal to a bike. If a bike and a rider is 250 pounds, that'd be 24 bikes in the same place. I've already shared with you there's 7 places closer than the next mountain bike trail in La Crosse, Wisconsin, where you can ride horses in Winnebago County and surrounding counties like Volga, over Whatcom Forest River. There's a lot of places to ride. These trails are not the only access they have to horse trails. Every DHPT project has been done in conjunction with Park and Rec. We're on our 3rd Park and Rec director since we started building trails up there and maintaining. We shared with you the 5 of 8. We are not trying to kick horses out. We have looked at national standards and presented them to you, which trails meet shared use national standards. So the fact that we're trying to keep horses out is not true. We want to cooperate, but we want to have horses on trails that are safe for horses. Finally, my interpretation of the Van Penen letter was that the park was given to the city for recreation. The examples that he gave were minimum impact, human use, and yes, horse use. Horse use on trails that is safe for horses and the rest of the town. I don't know, we've been through this. It's all been discussed. Nothing's changed since the last meeting. I would like to see this come to a resolution tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Jody Bohr, 1840, 227th Avenue, Kelmer, Iowa. I've been a resident of Winneshiek County my entire life. Brian Furman said last week that they're having problems in Yellow River with horses. The problem is people are going into our equestrian campground and camping without horses. Last year I was there, 8 campgrounds out of 30-some was people without horses. I watched 11 trailers come in and leave because there was no campsites. They're overrunning us everywhere we go. It's going across the nation. They're trying to kick us off. Now, when he talks about the weight of a horse, we can't ride when it's wet. It's dirt. We're walking on dirt. It doesn't wash away when we ride. And a lot of times, these horses aren't that big. We have ponies out there. We have smaller horses. And you say 4 people, okay, a family of 5. So the father stays home. So the mom and the 3 kids go. How much can she help them and have to get out and kick the poop off the trail when there's only 4? And if they want to get the permit, how long does it take to get the permit? And then it rains that day. So they try again the next week and the next week. That number is outrageous. We just want to get there, and this is a small area to ride. It is a let's go for a short ride. If I want to ride for the whole day, I'm not going to pick Decorah. I'm going to pick somewhere else where I have more riding area. This is for local people, and most of them live right around Decorah that ride these trails. You're not going to drive a long ways away to ride 5 miles of trails. I live on a gravel road. I ride a mile on gravel road to get to a pasture to ride. And sometimes there is nothing but feed trucks all the time. The dust is flying. For me, if I want to go for a short ride, it's safest to just come over to Decorah and go for a short ride. And that's all it is. And they're throwing more and more rules at us, and we haven't even hit the trails yet. We're not even allowed on the trails, even though we should be able to be riding Van Penen. But we're not even allowed there yet, and the summer's half over. I want to see this come to an end. I'd like to see no bikes in Van Penen because there was no complaining before them. And I've had my kids almost fall off. The horse almost went through the barbed wire fence from being spooked from bikers. We're at a high rate of speed, and we met on a corner. And then they yelled at us. It's not fair. It's not right. And we persevered, and we went on, and my kids did not want to keep riding, but I made them. And we rode every year. I usually ride Decorah once a year, and that's it. You don't see very many horses on the trails. Why this is such a big issue, I don't understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rebecca Putnam, 709 Washington Street, number 4, Decorah. First of all, I want to thank you all for all the time and energy that you've put into this very long-standing issue. Many of you received a letter from me outlining concerns that I have about the follow-through of both groups and what we've already shown you. At our last work session, which you all dedicated even more of your time, the walkers, hikers, bird watchers, and yes, bikers of DHPT sat quietly. We took notes. We stayed for the majority of the meeting, those of us that weren't called to a fire. We thanked you for your service, and we left. At that same meeting, representatives of the Saddle Club made fun of your work group. We could hear them yelling idiot and liars at you all and your counterparts in the Parks and Rec program. Once again, showing you the respect they have for the city, for Decorah Parks and Rec, and for the trails. I can't think of another solution other than the 5 of 8 pilot program, because if they can't respect you all for an hour, how can you trust that they will respect you for a year? I can't foresee just passing something different than what you all discussed, given what we saw just last week. Following the meeting, there was a disturbance in the parking lot after they all left loudly. Once again, thank you all for your time, and thank you for your work.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing, seeing none. Oh, sorry.
Real briefly, Mayor Borowski, Thomas Johnson, 110 Winnebago Street here in Decorah. Just a couple pieces of quoted material. In early March, Park and Rec always reminds folks that we've got sensitive trails. They could be damaged by any number of users. So in early March, they offered us this quote: "Decorah boasts a wonderful off-road trail system. Please be mindful of trail conditions before heading walking, riding, or running on the trails, and please remember to stay on the trails while you're exploring." So this very much fits into the whole muddy days, stay away, leave no trace, which is Well, we want to have from all users. So we want those trails to last because they're important to the financial health, the cultural health, the social health of this community, undoubtedly. Beyond that, just two other things I want to point to from last meeting. Brian Furman, who's been mentioned here, one of the things that he offered as Park and Rec is, quote, trails in the 5 of 8, they meet the criteria for equestrian use on shared use trails, while other trails did not. Again, quote, trails in the 5 of 8 plan meet the criteria for equestrian use on shared use trails, while other trails did not. Because we're talking about a city park here where it does have shared use, if this was a county park or a city park, or excuse me, a county park or a state park or someone's private land, like I could see it being much, much different. But with it being a city park that's funded by city property taxpayer dollars, it very much matters. And then lastly, I'd point to one thing that councilperson Emily Neal offered toward the end. Actually, I forget exactly when it was, but I think it boils it down pretty well for us. Quote, it's not this dichotomy between the horses and bikers. It's not this dichotomy between the horses and bikers, and we've got to stop playing like it is. It's about Decorah's trails and what's best for them and all users. Again, it's about Decorah's trails and what's best for them and all users. Thanks again for your session last week. That was pretty interesting and important dialogue they had, so yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. City manager, department heads, and council reports. Travis?
Yes. One thing I want to bring up, the Parks Department shared it on their Facebook page. We then reshared it. If you have not seen Miller Park Trail, and
You have your speaker on. Okay,
Can you hear me all right?
just checking.
Okay. Miller Park Trail, if you have not seen yet the prairie reestablishment up there, the seed, it's only been a year, and it's phenomenal how well it actually established up there. So I'd encourage you all to take a look at that. Big thank you to the Parks Department for that management up there. And one thing I'll bring up is, and it's actually not even related to a lot of the debate going on right now, but I want to make sure that when residents are calling City Hall, that it's understood that we need to speak with each other civilly. And so I've actually instructed staff they are not to take some of the abuse that staff take over the phone. So just so the public is aware, we're not going to accept some of the way staff gets treated over the phone. So just want to make that aware. Has nothing to do with tonight's conversation, actually. It's just, we're done with that. That's all I have.
Okay. Carrie?
I was just going to let the council know today, Winneshiek County Supervisors had a training on open meeting and public information. It's going to be recorded on YouTube with everything else. It's really good information. It's like an hour long, basic, but it's a great refresher. Just throwing it out there if anybody's interested in watching it. And I thought I'd give a little fun fact. Hydrocorp, who is doing the installation of the water meters, they said they've never had a community respond so well. So they've already have 2,000 out of the 3,300 scheduled. So that's huge because doesn't usually go that well. So kudos to our community.
And to you. And to you.
Can I ask a question on this?
Sure.
Just because I know it was discussed at department head, I saw it, and I had gotten a couple complaints about the leaks when they put them in.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something they're addressing and have figured out the problem?
Each situation is going to be different, so I can't say they're figuring out the problem. When I reached out to Hydrocorp today, they said when the people leave after they install them, they leave a card.
Okay.
So, and with the number and contact information, and they need to be calling Hydrocorp, and we are more than happy to help.
Okay.
But that's how they want us to handle it, because just for their documentation, and they're the ones that have to take care of it.
Okay.
So that's what we've been saying, call the number on the card that's being left. And if something's not being left, we'd like to know about it.
Okay.
I believe you said, Carrie, too, didn't they bring on extra staff to try to address
They
this in a
doubled
quicker
their
manner and
staff,
stuff like that? Yeah.
The original plan was around 5 individuals in Decorah, and they have like 10 to 11.
Good.
Last week they installed 380 meters.
right?
Cool.
Prior to going to council reports, I have two pieces of information. I heard that Vic Fye recently had passed away. He was mayor, I believe, like in the 1990s before Don Arndt, and I just wanted to pass that on and be thinking about his family. The second thing, I had talked about the Social Security office. I had contacted Representative Ashley Hinson and Senator Ernst's office. Their representatives have been excellent to work with. Both separately had contacted the Social Security, and what they heard back was that that's a one-person office. The person is retiring. Their goal is to get somebody else in there. And then there was potentially a staff hiring freeze that could affect it, but that they would do everything possible to make sure that that office would be open for part-time. So I'll continue to work with them. I've had several conversations with both the representatives, and they were very good to work with. Okay, Brent.
I don't have anything specific tonight, Mayor.
Christopher.
Only thing I have is that I would highly suggest going over to Carl Sealand Park when people have a chance, right across from Pulpit Rock. The sculpture that SMID was very integral in getting put together with the local artist is actually went up today, so it's actually pretty cool to see. I was there during that process, so definitely would suggest taking a look at that.
Cool.
Kirsten.
Couple things. I attended a couple meetings and talks in the last 2 or 3 weeks. The first one was the Iowa Cancer Consortium, was held in the annex up behind the courthouse. It was delivered by the Iowa Cancer Registry staff, the doctors there with them, and it's part of a 99 county project. I know we've talked on the council a couple times about the fact that Decorah here, or the state of Iowa, I should say, has the second highest cancer rate in the nation, and we're the only one with an ascending cancer rate currently. Good news for Winnebago County, they're doing this, like I said, on a county basis, and they're addressing the statistics based on each county. And as far as cancer rates go, Iowa ranks 76 out of the 99 counties, so we are much lower on the scale, and that puts us about on average with the rest of the nation. And as far as cancer survival rates, we are 98th out of the 99 counties, so we have a high survival rate of our cancers that we have here. The two highest cancer rates we have are for prostate cancer and breast cancer, so it's across the board spectrum of people that are affected by it. The good news about those two cancers is they're easily detected. Prostate cancer through PSA exams and breast cancer through mammograms, so I encourage everybody to get those done. The second meeting that I attended was the Driftless Water Defenders. They had their annual meeting. They chose to have it here in Winnebago County. Their goal is to try to fight clean water, or make sure we have clean water here in Iowa. It's headed up by a couple of gentlemen, Jim LaRue, who's an attorney from down in Iowa City, and Chris Jones, who was a former research engineer for the hydroscience department down at the University of Iowa. He's also the author of the Swine Republic. They're working very hard, like I said, trying to make sure that everybody has access to clean water here in the state of Iowa. And a lot of people have looked at the possibility that our water here, with the higher nitrate levels that we're seeing in our water, as one of the sources for these high cancer rates. At the first meeting that I went to, the consortium, they talked about that, and they said it's so hard to trace water as the source of a cancer, because normally cancer sources are from like a 30 or 40 year period, and most people don't drink out of the same well for a 30 or 40 year period. They've moved several times, they've drinking bottled water, things like that, so it's hard to trace it back. But those are two good meetings. That's a good, the Driftless Water Defenders is a good organization. If anybody's interested in trying to get into something like that or donate some time and money to it, they'd sure appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks. Steve?
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple things. I had my water meter replaced. I think I was one of the first appointments. It was great. If you are on the fence, they were in and out in like 30 minutes and very pleasant. So I hope you consider it. Everyone enjoy the fair this week. And I wanted to mostly just extend, I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone, a word of profound gratitude to the deputies and officers who were first on the scene and rescued that woman who could have been any one of us or any one of our parents, and just truly made a difference. It's remarkable knowing how many wonderful and talented people we have representing the whole community out there, and sometimes even saving their lives. That's a profound act of service you do on all of our behalfs, and it's just, we're so grateful. Which doesn't mean we have to be a doormat, Travis. I'm glad to hear about this this new policy with regard to hanging up on rude people.
Well, we don't hang up.
Well, you know what I mean.
We say thank you, have a great day.
Yeah, it's
Then
we hang up.
You don't say call your council person?
Yeah, just call your council person and tell them what you just told me.
Might get the next call, but not solicited.
So the last thing I want to say two things actually. The first is that I've been noticing a lot of the side-by-sides around town since we passed the ordinance, and so far I've been really pleased with what I know we all agreed on as a council, that we would try and see how it went. I feel like noise has been under control, and I see people driving responsibly and respectfully, and I just want to extend a word of gratitude to the council for trying something. I think it's also great for some of our neighbors to have another option rather than driving a big piece of farm equipment into town. To get here, and I think it's going great. I appreciate that. My final thing is that the last week at the pool, there have been just a number of one-off special activities related to the 4th of July, and those things take work. I know that the Parks and Rec department, they thought they'd do a movie night or a 4th of July party. My kids went; they had a blast, and I just really appreciate the culture of innovation and experimentalism that Parks and Rec is engaged in right now. So, Mark, I hope you pass that along to whoever was responsible, that we appreciate the work to change our programming up and diversify it and see what sticks, because people's needs change and we need to change too. So thank you. That's what I have.
Thank you. Randy?
The only thing I have is...
Could you speak into your microphone, please?
The only thing I have is to piggyback on the side-by-sides. I have noticed going through town some golf carts, specifically the ones that you would use in a campground where you got a seat on the back with no seat belts. And I'm not dead positive what to do about that, but I know those usually don't have seat belts and or turn signals. So just something to be aware of. But to the public, no.
Okay. Cody?
Nothing local, just...
Can you pull your mic a little closer?
Yep, just at a higher level. Obviously, everyone knows that there was a major bill passed federally recently, and as somebody who has a family that relies heavily on Medicare, Medicaid, that kind of thing, I just encourage people to stay on top of checking in to see if that's going to affect you directly, or what kind of coverage you may have, what the state of our local rural hospitals. I'm sure we're okay state or city level, but I just want to encourage the public to just keep on top of that and not get blindsided by anything that may come as a result of this. So that's all.
Thank you. Emily?
Well, I'm last, so I'm just going to echo everyone's Thanksgiving. I do want to repeat a giant thank you to the police and fire staff and the sheriff's department for their rescue, but also just how much, and this goes out to you, Chief, right? Thank you for the recognition, right? Thanks for bringing it to us, for including us in that ceremony, including the public in that ceremony, and for, being the head of a tremendous family that works on behalf of Decorah every day. So thank you to all involved. I also want to give a shout out. I think we already have, but I went and saw the mural on the trail, and I'm going to butcher Pete's last name. So if someone wants to help me with Teacup. Pete Teacup did a phenomenal job, and there is a heron on the murals, and they're wonderful and beautiful. And if you haven't had a chance to drop on the trail right below the Whippy Dip under the bridge and see them. They're great. It's a great addition. Echoing Christopher, the new SMID art, and just listening to council and the vibrancy of Decorah in the summer. It's just, I feel blessed every day to be here. So thanks, everybody. And that is all I have for now.
Thank you. Okay, consent agenda.
All right. Item A, minutes of the June 16, 2025 council meeting. B, minutes of the June 23rd, 2025 work session. C, minutes of the June 30, 2025 joint work session with Board of Park Commissioners. D, claims. E, resolution approving pay application number 3 for the Decorah Municipal Airport Conventional Hangar with attached terminal project. F, resolution setting public hearing for the Decorah Athletic Complex project. G, resolution setting public hearing on amendments to site lease with option for NEIT Properties, LLC. H, resolution establishing rank of statement of qualifications for the Decorah Municipal Building Evaluation. I, approval of the pay application number 2 for Decorah 2025 Highway Street Improvements Project. J, reward of Reserve Center fence replacement to American Fence Company. K, award of West Main curb and gutter replacement to Skyline Construction. L, new Class C retail alcohol license with outdoor service, Bon Appetit Management, Luther College. M, renewal Class C retail alcohol license with outdoor service, La Rana Bistro. N, renewal Class E retail alcohol license, Quick Star number 1190, 306 College Drive. O, tax abatement for J. Larson at 521 Mossman Drive, new construction. And P, special event application Holiday Lights 2025 helping services.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Miscellaneous. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Olson.
Aye.
Miscellaneous.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Whittle.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Consider an ordinance amending section 8.12.020 of the Decorah Municipal Code regarding exceptions to prohibition of fireworks. Second reading. Can I give the background on that, please?
Yes, so Senate File 303 effectively made July 1 our current ordinance obsolete. We're not allowed to enforce it. We did a lot, obviously a lot of discussing at council level, also stories with local media as well. I don't know if the message was received or not, but thank you to the public for complying for the most part with state law. I believe our PD had 2 calls of service the whole weekend related to fireworks, and so both went very well, very cooperative. And so again, this ordinance would change to comply with state law, which says July 3rd from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., July 4th from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., and December 31st, 9 a.m. to January 1st, 12:30 a.m., that you would be allowed to discharge fireworks in the city of Decorah. And again, this is in compliance with Iowa Senate File 303. We do also have in there, it references the previous insurance minimum of $1 million, and the council has set by resolution all other facets at $2 million. So this changes to $2 million as well.
Move for approval of the second reading.
I'll second.
Motion made by Chisel, seconded by Miscellaneous for approval of the second reading. Further discussion? Roll call.
Chisel.
Aye.
Miscellaneous.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Whittle.
Aye.
Neal.
No.
Parker.
Aye.
Okay, we will have the third reading as well. Consider confirmation of shared equestrian use trails established Board of Park Commissioners. Would you give the background on that? When you also give the background, will you give the trails?
Got them written down so I won't forget to.
Thank you.
Yep. So at the November 26, 2024 special meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners, the following trails were approved for shared equestrian use. in Van Penen and consisting of the 5 of 8 plan includes Fire Road, Pines Connector, Pines East, Pines West, Prairie Loop, Rocky Road, and the North 40 extension. In Dunning Springs and Ice Cave also includes the Luge, and this is separate from the 5 of 8, the Luge, Old Randy's, and Upper Ice Cave. At the June 30th joint work session, general consensus of the council was that the council viewed these as a rule that needed confirmation by the council. There was discussion on reducing the initial approved trails as a pilot to include the 5 of 8 plan. As noted by the city attorney, the council can essentially line item veto rules approved by the board, but you cannot create your own additional rules.
I make a motion that we pass a amended version of the shared equestrian use trails and pass the 5 of 8 plan as a pilot for the year.
Second.
Motion made by Neal, seconded by Olson. Further discussion? Roll call?
Neal?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Zittergruen?
Aye.
Chisel?
No.
Whittle?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Miscelinich?
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider purchase of Quarry Hill right-of-way.
Okay. The county's working with Bruning Rock Products to straighten and remove horizontal curve on Quarry Hill Road near the intersection of Whitetail Road. The main access to Van Peden Park is going to be impacted by this proposed work. That'll shift it, that when they straighten it, it'll shift the road further to the east. While no formal records have been located, and it's believed to be presumed to have been created by a handshake agreement essentially, that current parking lot was created from a previous attempt to straighten out Quarry Hill Road. The action requested is that the city approve the purchase of Lot 2 from Bruning Rock Products at the county assessor's set price of approximately $10,000 per acre. We don't have a defined amount of acres at this point because that would be after the design, but it's estimated to be about 1.5 acres, so about 15,000. The city does have a park land acquisition fund with a balance of just over 41,000 that could cover the cost of this. The Board of Park Commissioners has reviewed this proposal and recommends purchase.
Motion to approve the purchase of the Quarry Hill right-of-way, the 1.5 acres.
Second.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Parker. Any further discussion?
So it'd be a total of $15,000.
And I do use the words approximately in there, so it's expected to be about 1.5 acres as they draw, do the actual legal survey. And then the assessor's price right now is right around 10,000, but it will be the assessor's price that we would pay.
I was a little confused on the image of where they're going to redirect the road. Is it still going to, would the purchased property still remain on the same side of the road that it's on now currently, or?
It'll push the road further east as it straightens it out along Whitetail, and they'll actually shave off the horizontal curve means that crest as well. So they'll take that knoll down to improve the line of sight, especially at Whitetail Road there.
Okay, gotcha, yep.
So what it'll do is create that island of Bruning Rock Products' own land on the west side of Quarry Hill Road between our parking lot and actually where our parking lot exists today, plus the additional land between the two.
Okay.
So we would purchase everything west of the new right-of-way, approximately 1.5 acres at the assessor's price, which is estimated at 10,000.
And staff expects, I just want to make sure I have this right, staff expects that this new right-of-way would simply just be added to our Van Penen Park asset? Like, there's not specific plans for it right now?
Correct, yeah. It's to essentially formalize that we own that parking lot and doesn't jeopardize any, like I said, otherwise there'd be a sliver. And John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding of county right-of-way is different than city right-of-way. So we have a defined, usually 66 feet wide or something, defined right-of-way. That's the cities that we own between lots. In the county, the road right-of-way can actually cut through a parcel that you as a property owner own, and you essentially own just both sides of the county right-of-way. I'm oversimplifying it greatly, but I know if you go on Beacon, there's no actual parallel lines that follow a county road on Beacon.
They're all easements, and typically it's straddles two property lines, but not always. So this would be kind of unique here. They can do that, but it is an easement.
My other question had to do with sightlines to the quarry operations. It says in the description, the letter of agreement or whatever, that city staff will work with Bruning to ensure that excavation will be so extensive that sightlines to the quarry affect the enjoyment of Van Penen Park. That sounds like it's sort of a handshake agreement, which got us into trouble leading into this. So I'm curious, is there some way that we could expect that formalized, or do we know what that means?
You know, largely I'd expect screen plantings, something to that effect, or that the grading of the road itself isn't such that I'm parked in the parking lot and it's a straight shot horizontally over to the quarry operations. So it could be elevation, it could be, natural vegetation that's planted as a screen, something to that effect. But no, we don't know what that would be, largely because the county doesn't have a plan as to what that actual straightened route's going to be.
Can we formalize it though when they do? Like, can we put it in an agreement when the time is right?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly our purview to go ahead and want to get that added.
I mean, I don't want to be a headache here. If staff is willing to say that they know the situation better than we do, so are you all pretty confident that we're going to get a resolution we are okay with?
I'm not overly concerned on, let's say there is pushback on the cost for, $1,000 or $2,000 on trees to plant or something to that. My larger concern is having our access to that parking lot in Van Penen cut off as a result of this project. So I'd be more concerned on that going south than the actual screening, where then we can't actually access the park from that point.
Do you have any reason to worry about? Should we?
No, I worry about a lot of things that I probably shouldn't. And so that's just one of the things that could go south and we want to avoid. So I don't foresee there being an issue if we say we want to formalize what that means. I don't. I just need to point out that it's a potential issue.
This seems to work to the cities, the counties, the public's, and Bruning's favor. I think it's a great project. I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing something that we'd be kicking ourselves over 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Fair point.
Thanks.
I like that.
I think if most people have driven that road, that hairpin turn there and stuff like that, I mean, it is a nightmare. So I think if we err on the side of safety, I think this is a good thing to help everybody out, like I said, including the county, city, and people that use the park.
I think it's a good opportunity to clear up potential ambiguity of a supposed handshake in the past too. So if this is something that will solidify as part of the park, the Decorah park system, I think it's a good thing.
Well, thanks to Skyline and to the county engineer and our engineer and the staff who made this happen. It sounds like it's going to be a good thing for the city.
Okay, we have a motion and second, so roll call.
More and more.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it wasn't.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark more so. I'll admit they had a cost associated with it, so I was nervous from the word go. So, Olson?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Zittergrun?
Aye.
Chisel?
Aye.
Whittle?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Miscelinich?
Aye.
Motion carried. 2026 Iowa Highway 9 rock blasting plans, 60% review.
Okay, so if council recalls, during earlier work session, March 31st, we talked about the upcoming Iowa DOT Highway 9 reconstruction project, and the DOT allows for us to add on additional work at our cost. So one of the key components that we brought up was adding rock blasting on the north side of the Highway 9 between Park Street and Short Street, so that in the future we could come back and pave that as a trail extension of some kind to make that a much safer pedestrian bicycle corridor than having somebody walk on the shoulder of Highway 9. We're gonna review those plans with John. Additionally, we're gonna talk about some of the other aspects. The DOT is still up in the air on a couple, but we wanna point out a few aspects that the DOT is considering as part of their project. In addition, and it's probably not as, the public's not gonna see this or be that aware, but it includes the plans that we're reviewing includes help me, John, empty pipe, so we can use the pipe later is called. The empty pipe we're gonna put in under the highway, casing pipe, thank
Gonna
you.
get the microphone,
Drawing a
John.
blank. So we'll put an empty pipe essentially under the highway right away, cap off both ends for a future water main replacement that'll upsize to fit the development over on that side better. But too costly for us to pull off and not needed at this point to do a full water main replacement, so we'll at least case the highway right away so we don't have to come back and deal with them in the future. With that, I'll turn it over to John.
If you put it up close enough, say something. That'd be great. Thank you very much.
As Travis mentioned, this is a DOT project, and we're looking to piggyback on top of it. It's a once kind of in a generation opportunity. This Highway 9 was bypassed Decorah in the early 1960s, and so it's been, 65 years since that was originally constructed. There's a fair amount of development that's occurred out there.
Can you put a microphone just a little bit closer?
There's a fair amount of, is this better?
John, why don't you put the podium on the dais in front of you? There you go, you had a couple inches of height.
Is this better?
That's very much better. Thank you.
All righty. So the Iowa DOT project is going to be doing a full reconstruction of Highway 9 from just east of the bridge that has the lights on it, going past Park Street through Short Street where McDonald's is, up the hill past Pleasant Avenue underneath the underpass. They're going to be lowering the highway grade there. They're not going to change the elevation of the bridge, but by lowering the highway, then they'll get rid of a clearance issue that large trucks have. So we applaud that work. And then they'll continue on down the hill, but they'll stop short of Ridgewood Avenue. It'll go so far. The reason for this project, as I understand it, is that they had some money left over, and they said, let's put it to good use, and so they came to Decorah. So, in fact, they moved it up from 2027 to 2026, and when Travis and I talked about this, we said we have an opportunity here that won't be around again because to try and blast through that limestone ridge between Park Street and Short Street under traffic, 4 lanes of traffic would be difficult. But when they're doing reconstruction 2 lanes at a time, this is our opportunity to take out about 20 feet of the face of that limestone bluff. The vertical face will still be there, but instead of being right alongside of the TBR, which will be removed, it'll be about 20 feet back, and that will allow space for a future sidewalk. We're not putting in the sidewalk at this time. We don't have the money for it. So what we do is we would grade out the base there and leave it. It would still be left rough, and we would apply for a grant in the future through state rec trails, fed rec trails, something like that, to put in a sidewalk that would connect up Short Street to Park Street. That's our project, and you can see the 60% plans in there. They're very similar to what you saw back in January, I believe. when we originally introduced this as a project. It's not a complicated set of plans from our standpoint, but we have to be very careful with our blasting. We blasted in 2017, or excuse me, in 2011 to create the Trout Run Trail going over the cut. When we did that, Olson Explosives was the subcontractor for Skyline Construction. They had seismic monitors that we required to be placed on an adjacent house and the Highway 52 bridge that was very close. We also required a pre-site inspection for that on those structures. Moving forward here to 2026, we'll replicate that vibration threshold, seismic monitors, pre-blast site inspections on nearby buildings. I've spoken with the property owners along with Skelgas and Black Hills Energy about this, and so we have some traction on that. They're aware of it. Although when I mentioned that this project was going to be moving forward by the Iowa DOT in 2026, I got a lot of, oh really? Kind of comments. I don't know that everybody in town is aware that the Highway 9 is going to be ripped up for that length. Traffic will still be allowed 2 lanes at a time, but it will have impact on the volume and other things like that. Their design is looking to wrap up in September. They are aiming for a January letting. I have expressed on a number of occasions concerns that have been passed along to me about the safety of the Park Street intersection. I've told them we do not want to have another repeat the situation that we have over by Gunderson Clinic, where we have a half a turn lane. At one time there was talk about a traffic signal there. That is not part of the plan. They do not have turn lanes, dedicated turn lanes in their current plan at that intersection. And down at the intersection of Short Street, I haven't got a definitive answer on how they're going to be handling the medians at Short Street. Whether or not they're going to continue to be raised islands there or painted islands there. I've asked Mary Kelly, who's the Assistant District Engineer, if she would be available to come and talk to the council about their plans for that, because I know that the council is always interested in transportation in Decorah. And she said, well, yes, though that it is the plans right now are moving along for their September finish line, so that we couldn't probably fit in a major change like putting in a roundabout at the intersection of Park Street or something like that, or but that is a possibility. I wanted to kind of bring this up, you know, as a placeholder for not only our plans, but just to mention and to make the press and the public aware that the Highway 9 project is moving forward with the Iowa DOT.
Do we have an opportunity to write a letter about the turn lanes and our concerns? I mean, are they listening to you? Do they need more pressure from council?
There is a form that, an online form that Travis probably could forward to the council, and you could extend some thoughts to the DOT.
Is it a public form? Like, would we want to put it in the paper and include that the public should respond?
You could. It's. I think that they mailed it out to shareholders, and in that, in my response, I did not include concerns over Park Street and Short Street, mostly because I had previously in emails and conversations, had already expressed that concern. They are aware of those concerns that have been expressed throughout the community and so on like that. I know what they do is they design based on warrants and so on like this. I'm not looking to muddy their timeline for design and construction. They have, I think they've got a good set of plans for the highway transportation and so on like that, and that is their primary focus, I'm sure.
John, do you know that once they do the blasting there along the side, where they'll eventually put that sidewalk in, will that area be smooth enough for a pedestrian to actually walk on it, or will that be so rough that it would be impossible, basically, to be utilized until we get the funding for the sidewalk?
Depends on your level of, if you're trying to push a stroller, probably not.
Okay.
If you're just walking, probably yes.
Okay.
So we do need to say it's not a
Right,
sidewalk.
Right.
Because a rough surface within the right-of-way
Right,
is
right.
not ADA compliant, so
exactly.
it's not a sidewalk.
Yeah, we may have to fence it off and post signs. We will definitely be doing that on the top, but we may have to wrap that down around the sides temporarily. Good luck with enforcement of that, because people just walk around it.
Sure.
Because right now, and as I pointed out to DOT on several occasions, there are a lot of people that go from the hotels down to the restaurants in that corridor, and a lot of times they're walking at night because that's when they arrive at the hotel. They're hungry and they're looking for something, and they walk on the shoulder of the road there. Both the Bluffside Gardens owner and the manager at Country Inn have stated that they tell their guests, yeah, you can walk on the shoulder there, but please be careful.
Okay, great, thanks.
You mentioned the property owner at Bluffside Gardens. He had mentioned to me, I was asking him about this yesterday too. He'd mentioned that at one point he had offered to the city the possibility of routing the trail via an easement through there. And I think there's some elevation issues there, and maybe this is a better solution. Is that kind of what you thought?
So, right, I mean, as part of the discussion that back in January, we looked at the possibility of taking and putting a couple of switchbacks down between Culvers and Bluffside Gardens using that hillside. It would require an 8% grade, which is more than what ADA access would be. You'd be spending a lot of money, and that same scenario was considered by Trails of Winneshiek about a decade ago, and the consensus of that group, if I remember the conversation correctly, was it's not worth spending the money if people aren't going to use it, because they're going to continue to follow the
Gotcha.
shoulder of the road.
Because there's a desire path there, people are using it. Then my second question, given that we're squeezed between, a limestone cliff and a highway, that's not a very pleasant place to ride a bike. That's not where people would choose to ride. It's transportation for, kind of convenience, and I think that's fine, to build. Do we consider just putting a sidewalk there instead? Because I don't anticipate that this will be as heavily used as the rest of the bike trail.
We have clear zone distances that we are required to get off the edge of the traveled way by the DOT if we're going to put anything in there. And that's the reason why we're having to blast back the bluff. So it's a sidewalk.
Not yet. Will be.
It is
Not a sidewalk.
Thank you. It is a future sidewalk. I envision this as being used by bicyclists quite extensively. We have bike lanes on Short Street. They're kind of orphaned there. It would be nice to develop that network a little bit more extensively. And then we have the Trout Run Trail, and the Dry Run Trail is picking up some momentum going off towards the Nesty Valley property and so on like that.
I'm glad you said that, actually. I hadn't considered how many people will probably dart down Short Street to connect to the Trout Run Trail with this. I'm glad you said that. Thank you. My other question has to do with, like, this blasting obviously will increase pedestrian safety a great deal. It'll also probably increase motorist safety too. It'll give them better sight lines for traffic turning off of Park Street.
It will get rid of the TBR on that side.
What is TBR?
Well, TBR stands for temporary barrier rail. It's actually a permanent concrete barrier rail.
Yeah, thank you.
And those things are wheel catchers and hazards, and so that instead of having collisions of that nature, it's safer to not have them for vehicles.
But we would be removing then the barrier between highway traffic and pedestrians.
And then what you have is a recoverable slope with the offset distances that are kind of the standard.
All right. I'll just use this moment then to express into the microphone my disappointment that the Iowa DOT doesn't consider the pedestrian safety improvements and the sightline improvements for drivers sufficient reason to consider including this in their part of the package. I mean, I think they have a responsibility to pedestrian traffic and motorist safety as well.
Don't think I didn't point that out.
I just, again, I'm just with Emily. If it helps for me to pile on next to you, I'm here for it. So.
But, okay, the one thing I would say is that help me out with the name of the owner of the Bluffside Gardens, Brian Furman? Brent
Furman.
Yeah, he says that he has pictures of pedestrians walking along that side, and he said if you ever need a letter of support, please let me know. So he's very supportive of the idea. I think the Country Inn people are very, very supportive of the idea. On the other side of the road, the Fairfield Inn people say, oh, shucks, that was our one advantage because we've got the trail on our side. But they seem to be very community-minded as well. So in conversation, and I'll try to wrap this up so we can move on. In conversation with everybody that I've had so far, I've had nothing but positive comments about this.
I think everyone's in favor of the project. I just feel like when so many people are going to benefit, not just City of Decorah residents, I'd like the $600,000 or whatever it ends up costing to be shared more broadly.
Isn't Short Street south of Highway 9 behind the Fairfield, when we put the improvements in, didn't we put bike lanes alongside or widen it out for bicycles?
So,
and through the Alliant?
Excuse me, it would be, the sidewalk comes down from Fairfield Inn and goes and stops halfway between it and Pizza Hut. And so it doesn't make it all the way to Short Street. And I think the original plan was phase 1, figure out Fairfield Inn and the intersection with Park Street. That was done very nicely. Phase 2 came along, and the attention and the money went to another project, perhaps. So that was never completed there. But it's something that would be a good thing to finish up the west side there by Pizza Hut, going west towards the Skull Gas plant.
Right.
Is that where you were talking about?
Yeah, and
Randy?
out to the trailhead by Alliant Energy.
Yeah.
Because that was all supposed to be either widened out or put a trail and then signage coming off the north side of Highway 9. I remember that being in the original plans. We were gonna improve that back there piecemeal, and I haven't been back there, so I'm not a good one to say if it got done or not.
No, that has not been done.
Okay.
So just for clarification, going back to what you said, because when you were talking, I was getting the feeling that you feel like the DOT may or may not do the highway sort of in the best interest of traffic leaving the highway to enter into Decorah. Or are you feeling confident that they will take your suggestions and there will be full turn lanes necessary to make the appropriate turns and islands?
Well, they'll be doing a full depth replacement of the roadway. I think what I see, the configuration of the lanes and everything like that is very similar to what the width of the highway is right now. and the turn lane radiuses and everything like that. So, is it adequate for getting into Decorah? Yes. Like I say, the DOT knows highways, and they are good at designing those types of things. I think they're limited by right-of-way as far as how much change they can do. So I'm not disappointed by their plan. The purpose is to bring it to people's attention and then just point out the fact that there are a couple of issues that people have expressed to me, and I just wanted to make sure that, you know, I've passed those along to the folks at the DOT.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate you, John, pushing back with the state on those things. Appreciate that.
And I appreciate the foresight of seeing this as an opportunity to
very
take
much
care
so.
of it now while they have the means for a potential future projects. Thank you.
Very much so.
John, since we're still at the review stage, if at any point there's a chance for some sort of physical barrier between trail users and the highway, I think that is more important to the perception and experience of safety from trail users than maybe the DOT does. You know, they're designing, like you said, they're good at designing highways. I don't think they're good at designing bike paths, and I've walked along a lot of highways. It doesn't feel good. I just hope that there's enough clear distance, not just for the cars to feel better that they're not going to run into a cement barricade, but for the trail users to not be nervous about, you know, cars 20 feet away going 70 miles an hour. I don't know, you know, what we can make of that. Maybe we need some big boulders to drop off, but I bet the DOT wouldn't like that either.
70 and a 40 zone, what would that get them?
Hey, Randy? Oh,
Well, get them then, Chief. We need the money to pay for this trail.
okay. Thank you very much, John. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Consider request to Winnebago County for financial contribution to Decorah Athletic Complex. Want to give the background on that?
Yeah, so I asked Mark to pull some numbers for me on the rec programming. Here we go. So now that we've set the public hearing and we're going on back out to bid for the Decorah Athletic Complex, currently our rec programs and all our amenities are enjoyed by both residents and non-residents without any additional upcharge. So we don't charge additional out-of-town fees for rec programming, for pool passes, shelter rentals, anything like that. So the cost of those operations are offset by property taxpayers of the city of Decorah. The athletic complex will house all our city baseball, softball, rec programs, and as well as anticipated to pick up additional pickleball programming. 2025 summer recreational programming consists of 432 or 55.3% of unique city residents, 299 or 38.3% unique Winnebago County residents, and 50 or 6.4% unique individuals outside of Winnebago County. In addition to county resident use, a grant that has been pursued by city staff, I've already done the pre-application. The application's been sent to me for submittal, but the Community Attraction and Tourism Fund program, you may have heard me call it the CAT grant. They like to be the last money in, so you cannot apply for this potential $500,000 until you have enough funds raised that will get you within 10% of the total goal. The guidelines indicate the requirements for the application include, and this is a direct quote, project shows broad local support with financial investments by city, county, and private funders. So that's an additional reason for this being on the agenda to ask Winnebago County to help contribute to the costs associated with this project. Again, we'd be eligible for up to $500,000 through the CAT grant, and we are having those conversations with IEDA staff at this time.
Well, I definitely think we should ask them to contribute. The question is, do we blanket ask them, or do we actually give them an amount?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is there an appropriate amount that would be the request?
I feel like we should ask for an amount.
They're 38.3%.
Yeah.
I'm throwing out the numbers for a data-driven decision, but, you know, we have a $1.5 million fundraising goal that we need to get to for this project to happen. So, keeping that in mind, and this is a big if, CAT grant is by no means a guarantee. I want nobody to assume that even should we apply and be eligible, that this is money we're counting on. But an additional $500,000 from the county would go a long ways to the city's, you know, north of $2 million in this project.
Right. Travis, I really appreciate this analysis, and I think another thing that you ought to mention is that this project is what makes the school building possible also, and many school students or county residents as well. I mean, that's just another way that this project is benefiting not just Decorah residents, but all area residents, including county residents, so or non-Decorah county residents, I should say. I hope we expand the ask to kind of include that. I also think that at minimum we should request a letter of support from the school. You know, if you think that would position us for the CAT grant well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be going out for a lot of letters of support on that.
In terms of making this ask, do you think that are you anticipating a written letter, or do you want to try to see if we can convince the mayor to go and speak on our behalf at the county? What are you thinking?
I would propose a written letter. The dollar amount's the big question, of course. If the council's willing to consider a set dollar amount, or if it is simply a request for additional funding, that's the key component of this.
I appreciate that the county is probably looking at budgets with the same amount of, you know, trepidation that we do. It's hard. It's hard times to budget right now as a government. I sure hope that they sort of see this as a issue of sort of fairness and justice, that this is something good to do for our community's children, all of them, and we should all be carrying some of the weight. So I recall that they were very generous with the Sunflower project, and I hope that they dig into the same well of generosity when they get this ask.
I think also, I think John had noted too, when they did the trail, and I think the city requested the county for that they offered in-kind options, and you felt with this, I know you made a comment, that it was quite a bit different.
Well, and that's, you know, we dealt with that on the private fundraising side as well. People talking about in-kind contributions to the overall project. Iowa, again, Iowa Code Chapter 26, public construction bidding requirements. We have to competitively bid this project out as a whole, as one big project, where we award one contract to a prime bidder. Every other subcontractor they use, whether it's electrical, plumbing, grading, all those additional sub work, that's outside of our control. And so where some people might want to offer and say, hey, I'd like to offer my in-kind services to help wire up the electrical in the dugouts or something like that. We just can't pull those components out the way public bidding requirements work.
I would recommend that we ask for 500,000.
Remember what was they gave for Sunflower, Steve? What the amount was?
They gave what we gave.
We both gave $500,000 out of, I think, ARPA funds. If I recall correctly, I could be wrong. We could look it up.
I mean, I think if we ask for 500,000, they can decide what they can give, but I think that's a fair amount, given the numbers. You know, and I think that the city has to do a better job in general of articulating how much Decorah city taxpayers offset county taxes for services that all people in Winnebago County use. So the library, fire, rec services, right? They're all examples of ways in which Winnebago County benefits from services within the city of Decorah, but doesn't share the doesn't share the amount of taxpayer burden that the city does. And I think that this is just one example of how the county can come in and say, well, then let's help us, let's help us build this shared use project because the county clearly benefits.
And the corollary of that is that many county services benefit Decorah taxpayers as well, but many do not. A lot of county spending ends at the city limits. And so this is a place where I would love to see them partner with us to serve all of our communities that we serve.
I think $500,000 is a good ask as well. Travis was mentioning that we're looking to raise 1.5 million, and they have slightly over a third of the users for the park. So I think we're in the ballpark. $500,000, I think sounds like a good amount.
Sounds like we're all agreed that the county's going to give us $500,000.
Right, exactly, right.
Well, I'm really grateful to them for that.
Yeah, I want to thank the county for stepping up.
I think that action was requested, but not maybe in those terms.
Just trying to speak into existence the reality I want to see. We're manifesting things, Mayor.
Okay. Looking for a motion.
Oh, I'll make a motion. Sorry. I'll make a motion that we ask the Winneshiek County for a contribution of $500,000 to the Decorah Athletic Complex.
I will second.
Motion made by Neal, seconded by Olson. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Neal?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Chisel?
Aye.
Whittle?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Misselinich?
Aye.
Zittergren?
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider an award of fire rescue truck to Hyman Fire Equipment. You get background on that, please?
Yes. So at the May 5th, 2025 council meeting, council discussed the replacement of the current 2003 rescue. In FY26, we budgeted $500,000 in general obligation bonds or commercial financing revenues, along with $500,000 as an expense. So revenue in, cash out. The two companies that have been working with the FD indicated that lead time could be as much as 3 years. So the council approved soliciting for bids for a new fire rescue for consideration at this meeting. We received 2 bids. The lowest bid was from Hyman Fire Equipment, which is a Rosenbauer build, for $524,979. A $3,632 discount could be applied if nearly $100,000 for the chassis was paid up front. Given the proposal includes a 455-day delivery upon receipt of the signed order, staff would not recommend because we will greatly exceed that $3,000 discount in interest for 450 plus days. The other proposal was from Marion Fire and was for $634,000 and change. So again, this is money in, money out. We would not expect delivery, and cash would not be due until delivery. That's over a year out, fiscal 27. So even though it's in fiscal 26 and it's 500,000, if council elects to award, we'll just amend to pull both those 500,000s out, and in fiscal 27 we put in the correct number if council chooses to award.
I'll make a motion to award the fire rescue truck to Hyman Fire Equipment.
Second.
Motion made by Neal, seconded by Whittle. Further discussion? Roll call?
Neal?
Aye.
Whittle?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Misselinich?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Zittergren?
Aye.
Chisel?
Aye.
Discussion on fire station driveway in conjunction with the Decorah 2025 Hively Street Improvement Project. This is a discussion. Do you want to?
Yeah, so this might be
Put
one of
that
the
in.
harder ones, actually. So there's no action needed per se, but we want to make sure, from a staff level, we want to make sure council has an opportunity to have this conversation. So as part of the Decorah 2025 Hively Street Improvements Project continues, it's discovered the west side of the fire department apron is only 5 inches thick as opposed to the 7-inch thick on the original side, which is contributing to the settling issue on the west side. So even though it's newer, it's in way worse shape than the original. The work on Hively already results in the southern half of the apron being replaced with the stormwater improvements and the trail. If the contractor is willing and the city desires, for approximately $40,000, we can replace the entire apron, and while doing so, we would also change the grade so that the water would flow down to the apron to the new street gutter line, as opposed to the current plan of a low point being at the bottom of the apron before the gutter line and sending the water to an adjacent beehive intake in the grass. So this, if we were to do this, we could go all the way back to the doors and then position that grade in one continuous pitch, except for the trail. That has to smooth out a little bit. But it can allow for us to remove that beehive intake and remove the low point being before the street.
And when would that be done? Like when would, let's say we say, okay, we're gonna spend 40,000, but what if we're gonna rip down the whole thing?
Right, that's what my concern.
That's why we said this is probably the more difficult one, because there's so many variables about it, and timing is of the essence, kind of. So if we opt, we enter into a contract with ISG, they say, hey, based on our analysis, the cost effectiveness is tear down, start new. The question I also have to that is, okay, does the fire department location, the apparatus bays themselves, do those change? I don't know that they do. I think they're still on the west end of this site, and they're still within striking distance of that apron. They don't know that we're out that much in cost. It would probably have to be a saw cut of the apron and kind of retransition to the new finished floor elevation. I don't know though. On the other hand, if ISG's evaluation is based on cost effectiveness, you have maybe half the building, the fire department side, which is where primarily most of our issues are at, that cost effective wise, you're better off tearing this whole thing off, but leaving the we'll call it the east half. You're gonna end up with the same floor elevation that we have today, essentially, and that apron is right there ready to go. The point that probably the part of the initial design that I have some concern on is that low point being before the street gutter line and diverting the water into the grass to an adjacent beehive intake, as opposed to sending the water to the gutter line and letting the gutter line take it to a storm intake. I have not had good experiences. Actually, funny story, because it wasn't my garage, it was my father-in-law's. He built their house with a driveway that went down to the garage, had a trough drain, and then slight increase up into the garage. Well, in the winter, that froze, and his then 18-year-old daughter did not stop in time and hit the garage door. I have similar icing concerns because a beehive intake with snow removal will commonly get blocked. And so you end up with pooling at the bottom of the driveway. That's my single largest concern on this one.
And so if we reconfigure this whole building, like if we pushed it one direction or the other, that apron could be added to? So we would have just fixed the bottom part of it, but we could add to the apron?
We could, but it would have a different pitch. And at the bottom is where I see most of the issue. And John, feel free to chime in whenever, especially if I'm drowning. That's where I see, obviously we've got the biggest question mark. What are we doing with this building? If we say it is a renovation with addition, and we're even keeping the rest of the fire station side, if we had a crystal ball and we knew that, that'd be great. But if that's done, this is the absolute best time to do it, because we can also correct that design concern, I would say. We largely want to make sure council had the opportunity to have this discussion. I don't know how best to put it other than there's a lot of variables here, and even from a staff perspective, we're not sure what to recommend at this point.
Oh, why don't we could hear from Danielle.
Take it away, John.
Let's hear from an engineer.
Well, I mean, I take it as Travis throwing a line out to me saying, please, I'm drowning, so come and talk. And I might throw it right back at him, so. So, all right, in your council packet, you have a diagram, an aerial photo of what is being proposed for sidewalk, for concrete driveway that is under contract, and then the dark gray section out in the street is going to be put in as asphalt. The reason it's asphalt is that obviously when the next phase of Highvalley Street is, you don't want to have to rip out valuable concrete. We only are putting in a thin lift of asphalt out there. Okay, so the edge of the removals used to drain down to the cut-through lane and then would drain around the city hall using the cut-through lane. Now, when we are putting the curb and gutter essentially out in the through lane of the traffic there, the elevation is quite a bit higher, and so that the purpose of that beehive intake, like Travis has mentioned, is the top edge of the removals as currently done, and the gutter line are pretty close to the same elevation. There's quite a lot of fall from the fire station building down to the edge of the existing removals, so that if you draw a straight grade from the building to the gutter line, you can have a 2% grade going all the way to the street. What happens though is your sidewalk, when you do that, is about a foot higher than what the current plan calls for. So you can't just piecemeal it. The grades just won't work up. And so it's kind of one of those things where you can, if you're building of a new fire station, you can always raise it up. You can maybe lower it just a little bit, but your 2% is a pretty nice gentle slope for a fire truck to set up on, to set up their outriggers and do the stuff that they do on that. It's basically the cross slope of the sidewalk, and it's drainable. It's a nice south-facing slope and so like that. If the fire station in the future were to be demolished and rebuilt to a new elevation, you could make some modification to the driveway here. The reason that this, I believe, this section of concrete was left in, one, because of cost. I mean, it's $40,000. And then two, the unknown of what a building program would involve. So are we building something that a future architect would have to take out and redesign or something like that? If you leave it in, your opportunity to regrade the lower half is still there, but you would be ripping out sidewalk and the concrete driveway in order to achieve that.
Yeah, I guess that is my question. If we are going to redesign, remodel, reconstruct, can't we do it then?
You're talking the north portion of this. Can we do?
Can we do the apron again? Like, can we make the connectivity then, or we have to do it now? Like,
if we do a new one, and if the grade is any higher, any different than it is today, or even if it is the existing, it's not going to have the same uniform slope throughout. It's always going to have, the real issue at hand is the bike trail as it cuts through the apron. So if we don't decide to regrade and redo the whole apron, then that bike trail is going to be a foot higher than when we try to do it in the future. So that's going to be your limiter in the future, is if we wait to do it then we're tearing out the bike trail in the lower portion to replace the top portion.
Which is concrete, correct?
Correct.
Using today's dollars and roughly guesstimating the shape and size of what you're dealing with, $40,000 would cover the cost of removing the remaining portion of concrete and putting in 7 inches of new concrete with reinforcement in it over an 8-inch crushed rock base. In the future, if you wanted to, you're probably looking at an equivalent cost of probably 50% more because it's more area and the sidewalk is involved then too.
I mean, I'm inclined to say we should do it. I just don't want to.
Well, this 40,000 is just gonna cover the upper portion of the driveway, correct?
Yep, that's right, because
Right,
the lower portion is currently
It's
under
currently
contract.
already, yeah, in the bid process.
What about, can you explain the drainage again? If it's one way or the other? 'Cause
The existing plan or what would the
right,
proposed?
and then
Okay.
how that would be compared if you
Right.
redid it.
So, if you look in your packet at the plan there, at kind of the southeast corner, there's kind of a circular area, a pink circle in kind of a odd shape with a kind of a crescent moon that represents a curb.
Right. See it?
Where is it?
Right here.
Got it. Okay, gotcha.
Travis is pulling it up on the screen right now.
Okay.
It's there, it's just at the very, very bottom of the screen.
Oh, there it is.
Right, where his cursor is right there. Okay, so what it is, the fire station driveway is at the high point of the road. The water will shed in either direction away from the fire station driveway. So we're not getting a lot of through water coming from the Army Reserve Center, nor are we getting a lot of through water coming from the intersection. It's at the high point and it drains both directions. The current plan calls for all of the water from the building to come down across what's existing concrete right now, continuing across what's proposed concrete, across the sidewalk, and then it would make a turn and go to the east to where that beehive intake is located.
Mm-hmm.
Water in the street would stay in the street, but the curb would be at the high, would be a high point there, and it would slope back to the north toward the sidewalk and drain into that beehive intake.
So another consideration I do want to bring up, and I say this with the utmost due respect to volunteers as they're responding to the fire station for a call, that's going to get hit. Volunteers, as they're responding to a call, they're smiling back there. As they respond to a call, it is very typical for them to park off the apron, and it might not even be a responding volunteer. It very well could be an apparatus trying to pull out of the bay. You know, I certainly wouldn't hope that'd be the situation either, but that beehive intake gives me concerns about being hit as well.
That was gonna be my question, if either of these were gonna add any adverse, like, situations for the fire department in approach or leaving, just anything that's gonna make their jobs harder or add, extra wear and tear to the vehicles. Is there one that's better than the other in terms of that?
I guess I'd go back to Travis's point where in the wintertime you have the potential of having something dam up around that beehive intake, which may cause puddling down at the bottom or icing or something like that. It's going to require more care and attention and maintenance to keep it clean. Certainly possible to do, but it's something to be vigilant about. If you have a continuous slope from the building out to the curb, it's more drainable, and I would consider that a better option, but it's, I don't want to send you down, try to make a decision for you. It's you have a couple of options here.
John, are purple numbers the current and blue the alternate?
Yeah, the blue is the topography that was shot. That's the existing stuff. And the ones that are magenta color, those are the proposed grades.
Magenta, Travis.
That's this color, right? Okay. My box of crayons was only 8. So if that's proposed, what I'm looking at here is an elevation of 858.5 at the low spot nearest the intake.
Well, no, so yeah, that's what is on the current design there.
Right, on the current design, sorry. When I say proposed, I mean the current design, 858.5 for the elevation at that corner, with the curb at 859.4, give or take. And then as I go up the apron, across the sidewalk and the bike trail, you don't hit 859.4 until, I mean, it's 859.15 way back at this corner. So if we have damming, ice jam around this beehive, the first thing that's gonna fill up is this sidewalk and bike trail through the apron. That's the first spot all that water's gonna go.
I mean, from what you've said, it seems to me we should just spend the 40,000 and rebuild the apron, because we can make changes to the top of the apron and really we would be fixing the bottom, which is where the problem is. So we might as well fix the problem at the bottom of the apron, knowing we might have to eat a little bit of that pavement up if we remodel in some way, but maybe we won't have to. So I'm inclined to say let's do it.
I've got a few questions. Oh, go ahead.
Nope. Yeah, and I'm kind of leaning towards that way. I mean, if you look at this project, this is a big project. We got a lot of stuff going on here, and this is our time to get it right the first time. And so, you know, I think I think this design's good, and we can leave it. And if it dams, you know, I'm sure it could get thawed out and drain. But I think if we get to the point that we're putting a new fire station there, when it's all done, I think we're going to look back and be like, we should have just did that, because I think the problems that it's going to possibly cause us, the hassle, and then also the maintenance of it. I think us just going through with this project, getting it right, doing a good job with it with the grade, eliminating that beehive so the water can run out onto the road, and then dealing with the fire station aspect when that time comes, I think it's feasible.
Especially if it's gonna cost us twice as much.
And since we're still doing talks with potential designers for this building, that could be something that could be brought to them as something to consider.
Line up perfectly with our
their
apron.
design. Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. The
Hey,
conversation, go ahead.
Can I make
Yeah,
a
of
point
course.
to Cody's a comment there? Yes, you can go and talk with ISG, but how long do you want to leave the South Bay inaccessible for the fire trucks? I don't know how long ISG's review is going to take, and so on like that. That's something to consider too.
Thank you. Yeah.
The conversation we're going to have about potentially rerouting the bike lane to the south of Hively, that's west of this point, right? That's not going to change this conversation at all.
No, the intent was to leave the cycle track at this current location.
I just want to make sure I understood that
Yeah.
that my understanding was right. So I guess, does staff know, like, $40,000, would we just add that to the bonding of the project, or like what do we have a sense that we'd use general dollars for it?
So this does have a little bit of room in the budgeted amount for Hively Phase 1. And I stress a little. The big question mark is the, we'll just call it rubble, that they're finding as they're doing the excavation for the pipe work through this project. This was definitely an old dumping site for a lot of things, tires, scrap metal that's all rusted out, a lot of bottles and stuff. In addition to that, they're finding the former riverbed silt that is so fine that they cannot get decent compaction to it. That's essentially Play-Doh, that it has a moisture like clay, Play-Doh, and so that's part of our settling issue as well. So they're using granular backfill rock they're hauling that silt material out using granular backfill. We have a budget line for that 3 weeks ago we were in a much better spot with. Then we rounded this corner and we spent a lot of money on rock backfill.
And
up
it's the
front
rock
here.
backfill of the pipes. So you got the deep trenches. That's what that is being used for.
Well, my instinct, I appreciate all the answers, and I agree with Emily. I think that, even if we end up in 5 years or 2 years or whatever, you know, I think the average case is that we maybe have to tear up like the very north part of this because we expand the building footprint. I suspect that an architect would want to integrate with this driveway because it's so expensive, and you can move the building grade up or down if we were to rebuild. Is that how that works? I'm not an engineer.
Well, and even the transition
Or an architect.
you know, this is the apparatus bay here. And so even as you transition into the apparatus bay, I mean, you can do grade transitions inside a building. I mean, we do it here with the hallway here. So you could continue essentially the grade in the apparatus bay as you're coming up and in. I mean, you can do that.
So it seems like we probably, if we pour this, I just have a sense that regardless of whether we progress with a reconstruction or a remodel, it feels like we would probably not tear it up, which makes me think we should do it. That's, you know, if we do end up needing to tear it up because that's the way things go, I promise that we won't blame staff for that. We know that this is not an easy call. I think though that it's the right move and that we'll probably be happy we did it. I would encourage us to consider, you know, I'm just all about asking people for money tonight, but maybe the Rural Fire Association should be approached to see if they would consider a cost share, given that this serves the rural annex shelter as well.
General consensus on the council?
I'd be in favor of moving on with it too as well.
Is there anybody who does not agree with that?
All right, we'll take those, we'll take that back to the contractor and look at a change order at the next meeting.
Thank you, John.
Discussion on Hively Street and College Drive Bridge construction sidewalks configuration.
I would say, don't go too far.
I was going to say, you want to sit for a few minutes?
So I said, yeah, you can sit and just relax.
Did you get the battery back in the, okay, now you could sit there and use the microphone there if you want.
So I said before that this might be the more difficult conversation. Might be. This next one could be as well. But again, staff felt it necessary to make sure that that council has the opportunity to have this conversation looking at holistically at the Hively Street and WHKS bridge projects. Pull my notes up here. So included in Dropbox is file 014. And I'll hit share screen on this. People can follow along. Okay, so included in Dropbox file 014 is a design, or excuse me, an option that we haven't really discussed before. So the current design calls for a 10-foot cycle track on the north side of Hively Street with a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side. Southbound motorists have poor visibility of pedestrians queuing up at the crosswalk southwest of the bridge due to that concrete barrier rail and handrail. So even with modifications that are proposed as part of that project, that crosswalk on the north side still at a somewhat angle. It's not square at the intersection, and that rail is still really close to that proposed crosswalk. This design follows the 2018 community visioning configuration and current pedestrian route. There are 4 street crossings, and as that cycle track continues east along Hively, there are 4 street crossings and 1 future driveway crossing between College Drive and Mill Street. The south side has 1 less street, so 3 street crossings, but more driveway conflict points. So that was one of the conversations we had and why we chose the north side of Hively as opposed to the south, because of those driveway conflicts. An alternate proposal that's in there shows an 8-foot cycle path on the south side of Hively Street. So it's 8 instead of 10, largely because of space constraints. But with a 5-foot sidewalk on the north side. Street lights would be moved to the south side of Hively Street to illuminate the cycle path and street. Visibility of the crosswalk landing west of College Drive and south of Hively is greatly improved. Crosswalks would remain as concurrently figured. There is minimal right-of-way at the southeast corner of College Drive and Hively Street, and pole placement affects crosswalk alignment. Again, that's why It's 8 feet proposed, or not proposed, excuse me, I don't want to use that term, as the alternate as opposed to 10. The south sidewalk approaching College Drive along Hively Street has a more gradual slope than on the north side as well. The alternate cycle path would cross Hively Street at the Mill Street RRFB crosswalk. That's the same traffic control device that we have on College Drive at the intersection of Quarry. And then the alternate crosswalk configuration crosses 2 lanes of travel at College Drive, whereas the north crosswalk crosses 3 lanes. So maybe this one's harder?
Travis, could you also speak, are there any concerns about room for queuing on the west side of the crosswalk in the current configuration?
And that was one of the things that we thought could be addressed if it were on the south side as well. That, let me grab. So this space here is actually city-owned parcel outside of the levee. I apologize that it's, yeah, let me zoom in a bit here. Actually, what I may pull up.
We gotta get you a laser pointer.
No, that's too much fun. I'll grab Beacon real quick here because then it can show parcel lines. Shared the wrong thing. Okay. Oh, and Chase is also on Zoom with WHKS. I just noticed that. Thank you for joining us, Chase. So here's that south crosswalk as it currently exists.
Right.
This is actually city-owned property right here. So on the south side, we can better address any queuing up of traffic at that intersection than on the north side because of the levee. Any modifications of the levee is going to be extremely difficult.
And because we're talking to each other and saying queuing situation, I just want to clarify for everyone, the queuing we're talking about is people using the multi-use path waiting to cross College, not car queuing.
Correct. Yep. So.
Which, if you all go by that, you know that there's often bikes and people waiting and whippy dip line, and there's a lot of stuff going on. There's often a lot of users right there, and so this is a place where I think it's worth paying special attention.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that was actually, again, one of the concerns that got us looking at this. How do we address that concern with this design, and got us down this path of, okay, what if that crossing is actually on the south side? We can better address that. There are other enhancements to it.
Yeah, without a doubt that the north side part there where you try to cross on College Drive there is definitely a safety hazard. I mean, cars can hardly see anybody because of that guardrail and because of the cement rail that runs along there. It's almost impossible to see anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I like the alternate. I don't love the driveways there, but that section right there, it's like.
Question though, on the crossing at Mill Street, being on the corner there, if you go back.
Pull it back up. Okay, crossing at Mill.
Go back just to the left of letter E. There's an old driveway from the Midtown.
Mm-hmm.
Could that be used because its line of sight is a little bit better coming through that corner? Could that be your crossing for the trails?
You're saying cross Hively farther west than is currently
Yeah,
proposed?
Yeah, just to the left of.
Right here?
Yeah, on that old driveway for the Midtown
Oh,
Motel.
okay. Right above the 14+00.
So as opposed to going to the actual intersection.
Actual
cross
intersection where you're on the
previous
corner.
to that.
more on a straightaway so it's more visible to cars coming around there, especially those that aren't familiar with our community.
Mid-block crossings have a lot, to offer.
I mean, John, is that
So the one thing we need to, yes, mid-block crossings are allowed and our RFBs are appropriate use at those locations. That Midtown Motel driveway that you see right there is actually a proposed future driveway for whatever development would occur in that that grass area to the north there. But that's not to say that things can't shift around. That's certainly a possibility, yes.
Another potential issue with that is the driveway directly across from it to the south is that apartment complex driveway access.
Right, that
So you'd
line.
have to be on one side or the other.
Right.
That general area could be acceptable, just not that approach there.
Well, and there's almost two driveways that run almost next to
Right.
one another there that you're.
Let's take a big step back and because it seems like there's a major alternative here. We don't need to engineer it until we decide if we want to go down that road. So
Perfect.
I think that hopefully staff, and hopefully John and Travis heard us at least encouraging them to explore a mid-block crossing if we move the bike trail to the south. That's probably all we should be doing right now in terms of that. I'm curious, the 8 foot is because of space limitations, because of parking spots that no one uses? That's me being catty?
No,
All
no,
right,
it's
good. I'm
actually-
glad to hear that that isn't why
Yeah.
we can't have a 10-foot trail.
No, it's actually this radius here on the corner. And again, Beacon, I should add, it's a good guide, but it's certainly not spot on. But it's really within this corner that 10 foot is going to become problematic at best. And the sidewalk is typically, the backside of the sidewalk is typically the property line. So this layer might be a little bit off.
So I would add in a couple more comments. By using an 8-foot wide sidewalk, cycle track on the south side, you leave a 6-foot boulevard then, and that gives you adequate space for a couple of intakes that are behind the curb style intakes, as well as light pole placement, because we would shift the lights from the north to the south if this was going to occur. It creates space for your for everything to find a home instead of having it compressed into a 4-foot section. Drainage is another consideration, but just like Travis was saying up at the Weiss Buick corner there, this was something that WHCAS pointed out was kind of a tight little area, and I think that they would probably want to go back and look at how things potentially could go around that corner. Bear in mind, it'd be like a California style curb where there's no buffer between the curb and the line of traffic and the edge of the sidewalk. So it would be like what you have on College Drive in certain locations where your sidewalk trail is right up against the street. I think that getting accurate right-of-way information right in that particular corner would be probably a prudent thing to do.
Just in case there's another foot that we can expand it, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, to find out where the pole placements are they in the right-of-way, are they on private property, are they, what kind of space do we have there in order to make things fit, for lack of a better description, because I don't, the California style curbs, especially when you have turning the traffic coming off of College Drive and going onto Hively Street there, that's, those vehicles are concentrating on the curb there, and I wouldn't want to see somebody stray off the sidewalk into the street. I don't think that would happen. It has not been my experience that would happen, but it could. Another thing to look at then is how we are handling the lanes and any sort of modification on the north side. If So there, what we would need to do is ask WHCAS to do some additional design in that area, unfortunately.
I hope that if we go in this direction, we do what we can to, 8 foot is it's 10 foot by college, right? That's what the multi-use trail is?
That's
Is
what I was
that-
about to ask.
Well, on College Drive by Pulper Rock Brewery is actually over 12, and then it's a very variable width. Most of the trout run trail is 8 foot. The recommended standard is 10.
What's Fifth Avenue sidewalks? The Fifth Avenue sidewalk, is that 8?
The Fifth Avenue sidewalk? No, that's probably a 6.
Okay.
Right out front here, this stretch of Hively that's already been done, this is all 10.
It's hard to think about 8 for that I mean, because really what we're doing is putting a bike trail on a sidewalk. I know, it does seem like we have to give up, it's definitely competing values of better sight, smaller path.
Maybe the-
California curb on a curb that could turn out to be dangerous.
And if there's, is there appetite for doing the alternative or keeping it the way it is?
Yeah, I think I've said this for months and months. I've said it to you in a private conversation. I've said it in several emails. I don't understand why we haven't been engineering the bike lane on the south side of Hively the whole time. I've ridden it hundreds and hundreds of times with young children, and because of the grade on the north side going up to College, and because of the fewer street crossings, I've always, when I'm with kids, I've always kind of gone in that direction. I feel like it makes the College crossing safer as well for people using the bike trail. And so I think like you said, Emily, this is a competition of values. If really there's no way to get around 8 foot and a little bit of exposure to a California curb, I still think this makes the plan overall safer and better and more useful and usable. And I think that will result in it being used more, even at 8 feet. So I like the transition. I'm concerned the change. I like the alternate, I should say. My question is, was there any consideration given to trying to keep the multi-use trail on the south side of the road until you get to the school? That avoids, I don't know, another road crossing. And if we want to get to the school campus, we could maybe do that mid-block, in the north, like across from the North Alley parking lot. The reason I think that would be beneficial to the public is that gives bikers a route to downtown as well as the schools, a pretty convenient one. So that's what I'm looking for, is like, if we keep them on the south side of the road instead of crossing them to the north, and then when they get to the end of it, they can decide, am I going towards the campuses or am I going to Water Street, and make the right decision. But if we force every bike to the north side of the road, well, people heading downtown or farther east, they're gonna probably get on the road, or they're gonna ride the sidewalks the rest of the way. So that's just encouragement, I guess. Was there any thought given to that possibility?
So, a thought of that directional flow to the school campuses or up to Water Street was one of the considerations for making the transition here at Mill, along with the existing RRFB, that if I was wanting to go downtown, that I could come off Mill.
Right.
It would be more direct as opposed to going around Hively and then coming up to, maybe it is River here, which is a steeper incline, than if I made the turn here on Mill and continued up Mill Street to Water.
And at that point, the city's expectation, we don't want people on the sidewalks on Water, so we would expect them to transition to street riding.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that was one consideration. John, it's this area here that gets problematic, correct?
Yeah, there's so the drives to the private residences that are on the west 2 blocks have a car that goes in and out of them a couple of times a day. The post office has got a very busy drive, and so does, and the bank is less.
Yeah.
But you have 4 drive conflict points there. the other, so it's not the most, that's a concern. The other thing that, having had been out there and observed the traffic use and the pedestrians, there are a lot of people that coming from and going to the high school. That's the primary destination of the sidewalk users, more so than adults that are going to and from the post office to City Hall up to downtown. The use that the sidewalk on wrapping around the City Hall and using the destination of the high school is significant. But back to Travis's point. So to answer your question, Steve, yes, we did look at it, and to Travis's point, having the flat grade of Mill Street is more desirable than to try to stop a bike on River Street with the incline. Mechanic Street could also be done. It's you know, that's certainly a possibility to wrap things around and bring a cycle track all the way to the corner of the at the movie theater there. But I think that the direction that we had discussed was trying to make the transition happen at Mill Street.
But again, you'd be on an upslope or wherever on Mechanic Street as well, when you came up to the intersection of Water Street. So, no, I think most people would probably use the Mill Street way to get to downtown if they're biking on that.
I don't think that's true, KO.
Yeah. I mean, I would in a heartbeat, but.
Yeah, I think adults, like, I can ride bike as fast as a car downtown. Like, I don't mind being on roads, but I think when we're designing a path, our goal is to expand the user base of our non-auto transportation infrastructure. And I would love it if this could serve users who wanted to bike to the ice cream store or to the grocery shop. And, you know, I feel like this design sort of psychologically encourages people, hey, this is for the high school. This is a school path. Anyway, I've said my 2 cents. I've said it many times.
Steve,
I won't say it again.
It's certainly possible to, you know, have, you probably could have a change order and put an 8-foot wide sidewalk all the way to River Street and let those folks make the decision, and you don't, it probably doesn't have to be one or the other. You could probably have both, but
That's an interesting thought. I mean, obviously this project's pricey enough as is, but I wonder if that would get enough use to justify the cost. I suspect that we're going to see a lot of people on that sidewalk continuing.
That would be on the south side.
That's
So
right.
you mean an 8-foot on the south side, but then it switches to 10 on the north side already, so 10 on north, 8 on south?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of pavement, but I also think it's a pretty heavily used area. It's not 40 feet or 36 or whatever we decided on. It's still a lot less than that.
I would still have concerns about the driveway crossings between Mechanic and River Street, though. Those aren't going away.
Again, I've done this hundreds of times, and I've had cars on roads a lot of times. I feel like people going into and leaving their driveways is such a rare. I guess you're talking about the commercial driveways, though. Is that right? Yeah. That's right. The post office is a significant concern. Although we're not, I mean, we would not be the first city in the history of the universe to have a bike lane cross a busy driveway. We just need to market. You know, we need to make it clear if we go that way.
We could also put a sign on Mill Street, this is downtown this way.
But with no bike path there, then we're just kind of dumping people. No big deal.
So what you're saying is that you're going to transition to Mill Street without a bike path on the sidewalk, you're going to move to the street.
That's I think what this design contemplates. And I'm, like I said, I'm fine with that, but I want to build bike trails that work for young children too. So I want to make sure that we're doing that.
I think the alternate makes sense for the, especially the city-owned part on the west side, adding a new or additional queuing location, I think is a good thing. I think when I'm riding, it feels more natural to go down on the south side there. One of my concerns is that when we were looking at potential plans for the farther eastern part of the Hively build, that the bike path was on the south side there, kind of going through like where the co-op parking lot is at, as it stands. Is that correct, John?
That was
possible.
That's a possibility, and that is wide open for discussion.
Okay.
Some of that came from these vision documents that were suggested.
Yeah.
But that's a 30% design conversation for MSA.
Yeah, okay. Because when I was looking at that, I was hoping that in the future we could maybe possibly move that to the north side instead of Hively. But I know there's a lot that has to come through the school build, and I know that this is in the future. I just would want to make sure that we keep that in mind, just so that we're not redirecting them across Hively to different places, if that is the way that it should go. And I know that there's a lot of communication that needs to happen before that goes into effect, but I think it's something to consider in looking at this. Or maybe it will just have an effect on what our plan is for that part.
It might be worth noting to keep in mind that the school site plan, it's much like any other commercial site plan, so that's got to come through P&Z and council for approval, which is very common for the council to say this needs to have a sidewalk in this location around the perimeter, whatever that might be. So
I have a question. Just when we're doing site plan review, could we go so far as to say you need to have like we brought the cycle track to your boundary, you need to get it across to the high school? Like, could we do something like that?
So the way code currently reads is anything beyond 4 feet, the city, if we require it, the city pays for anything beyond 4 feet. However, I will point out, so the 10-foot extension out here, moving east along Hively and Clay, as it wraps around to Claiborne, the school voluntarily did the section east of the storm intake to carry that uniform width all the way to their driveway where it transitions to wider pavement there. So I think there are ways to have a conversation to help them make that decision that it's needed, other than us just requiring it as part of the site plan. But I did want to make that notation.
There is no reason that we can't have both a crossing at Mill Street and a crossing later on, right? I mean, so I think we should ask ourselves, I think a crossing at Mill Street makes sense for users going to the high school, for sure. If we want, then when we're looking at the other parts of streets, I feel like we're talking beyond the scope of what we're looking at now. If we want to talk about furthering the path beyond or crossing, having another crossing at River or Mechanic or further down, we should discuss that at a later point. I feel like we need to stick with right here, and the Mill Street crossing in my mind makes sense, even if we have one somewhere else.
Go ahead. Remember, River is going to be a traffic circle as well. So
yeah.
It won't be the typical crossing that
right.
we normally see.
So, Emily, I've got several things that are coming to mind. Hively Street Phase 1 is under construction. And so...
No, I was just trying to address what he was...
Right. So if there's any sort of width change to that sidewalk, we probably need to have that decided very, very soon. And not tonight, but we would need to make that decision by early August. So keep that in mind as a placeholder, and then backing up to where this conversation was intended, which is the intersection of College Drive and Hively Street. That is currently being advertised. The plans have been designed, and we have a current design. The letting for that is going to be July 17th, for the council's consideration on July 21st. So 2 weeks from now is when you would be considering these as final plans for an award. The way that the contract is structured allows for the College Drive bridge approaches. The way the contract is structured allows the contractor to either do the work in the late fall or next spring. And Travis in the past has asked the council, well, which would you prefer? Because, you know, it's a guessing game as far as what the most advantageous pricing would be. But if we're going to change something at the intersection of College Drive and Hively Street, it can't be done in a week. And so we may need to figure out a way, and Chase, perhaps you could comment on this, is would we need to pull the potential letting date and go to a redesign and look for just a spring window for construction? That it's going to take a little bit of time to get a plans put back together, because we would have to look at the concrete barrier rail at the southwest end of the bridge. We'd need to take a look at the curb going around the Weiss Buick corner, and the pole placement and the right-of-way that's there, along with any sort of, do we need to make any sort of improvements on that sidewalk that is currently was going to be used as constructed, that runs through the back side of the Weiss Buick parking lot right across the street from Julian, and tying into the sidewalk on the south side of Hively Street. So there's a number of considerations for design and the logistics of and timing of this.
Did you want Chase to weigh in, John?
Did I want who?
Did you say Chase with?
Yeah.
Did you want him to weigh in?
If there's something, he volunteered his own time tonight to listen in on this conversation, and he said, you know, if there's something that you need help with, or I'm misstating, that he would chime in. So I'm giving him the opportunity if he is so inclined.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, John. Can everybody hear me? I assume.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Yes.
Excellent. So, yeah, I would just piggyback on what John said, in that, you know, if we do decide to go with that alternate route on the south side, I think it would be in everybody's best interest to get a little more right-of-way information in that corner by Weiss Buick. And that way, you know, we obviously don't want to build the trail on their private property. So, and then we could also, you know, leverage as much space between their private property and the existing curb as is possible there. So, yeah, I mean, that obviously takes time, and take a little bit of time doing a redesign and putting together new quantities and stuff like that. As far as our options for bidding it, like John said, we could pull it back. That's not, or that is an option, I should say. Or we could bid it out and then, you know, negotiate with the winning contractor, and basically have a big change order, not necessarily a big dollar amount, but a big change to the project. I think that'd be a discussion to have with city staff and see what their preference is. And, you know, obviously we would have to have that discussion soon. So yeah, if that's the preferred alternative to go on the south side. But that's all I had for now, John and Travis. Thank you.
One thing I do want to note, we haven't highlighted it at this point, but in the alternate that's being discussed, there is no proposed crosswalk across College on the north side. So there's none proposed there. That eliminates the need for bridge rail modification. There are some cost savings by doing this. We no longer have to worry about addressing. That was a bad way to phrase it. We don't have to stress to figure out the crosswalk compliance issues on that north side, and it will lower our costs there. Obviously, going from 10-foot wide proposed on the north versus 8-foot wide on the south, that's a little bit of cost savings there. All these little amounts that the alternate could potentially save us, we do feel is probably going to be pretty close to a wash on redesign costs. So mainly pointing that out so that if council has the desire to redesign, there are cost-saving elements in the alternative that can cover those.
And then you'd be comfortable like working with it the way it is and then doing change orders as you get closer to it, just like he described?
So the WHKS project, I'm fine with that being a change order because you're moving essentially it's a big change order that does change a lot of where stuff goes, but it doesn't eliminate or change the scope of what's going in necessarily. Like it's not like the athletic complex. We talked about completely removing the asphalt from the project in the parking lot. This isn't the same thing. We're greatly changing the scope of the project that we should be bidding it new. John, your thoughts? John's looking at me like he's angry.
No.
You disagree?
No. Just all the plates that are spinning, you know? It's,
Yep.
You hope you don't make a mistake.
I feel like a lot of work has already been done into what is currently existing to just stick with that. I feel like people have thought that through, unless there's going to be major cost saving with the bridge section.
Why did you guys figure out alternative 2? Because you weren't quite, was it alternative 1 just isn't quite right yet?
Well, it was largely to address some concerns on the queuing up on the west side of College Drive. How do we figure out, could a bump out type, just a little bit of taper, could that work? Trying to come up with those different solutions. And it was, that north side of the crosswalk still isn't straight square with the intersection. It didn't quite achieve really what we wanted to get to in the first place. So if we go to the south side and then push the trail back to the north as part of Hively phase 1, it kind of achieves overall what we thought council was wanting to address through the area.
I would, if I could jump in, the sight angle of that crosswalk on the northwest corner of the bridge is, it's with the concrete there and the vertical pickets of the handrail, it's easy to disappear behind that.
Totally.
And by eliminating that crosswalk and moving it to the south as they are currently configured, it gives better sight angles for people that would potentially be crossing the street. There's 2 lanes of traffic versus 3. There's, but it's, for me, it was the sight angle that we had there. And then part of this, having this opportunity to have this discussion tonight, was that we had a difficult time getting a quorum at the last meeting when we were doing our 60% design review. So I want to emphasize that Travis and I and Chase and all the people involved in this are interested in what you guys have to say, and we listen and we try to do our best based on your input.
From what I'm hearing, it's primarily a safety issue that you're looking at, which, I mean, my wife and I just walked this the other day just to look at it and see, and I can see where a car just almost cannot see anybody if you're standing there, because that guardrail sticks up high enough and it's coming over a curve on the bridge. It's almost impossible to see a pedestrian waiting to cross there. So I see a safety as a big issue with that north crosswalk.
I just have to give some credit to staff for taking these concerns seriously and being willing to do a really hard look that would create some headaches to make a change at this juncture and give us an alternate to consider. I think the enhanced safety of the better queuing, so that someone doesn't accidentally wave their arm while they're waiting at Pulpit Rock and knock, someone onto the road in front of a car. I guess, there are trouble spots in our community where I see near collisions all the time, right? There's a couple of them. This is certainly one of them. And I feel like crossing 2 lanes instead of 3 and the better visibility of the south crossing are such safety enhancements that they're worth the headaches and the compromises we have to make elsewhere in the plan. That's my take on it. I don't know what other council members feel, but I would like an answer from maybe John and Travis or anyone else who's thought about this, because you all have thought about this more than we have. You know, if you were looking at a blank page right now, would you put the crosswalk on the south or the north side if you were starting over?
I probably would put it on the south side. I don't like it from the standpoint of its connectivity when you're trying to link and cross by Mill Street there, but I think that that's a less of a concern than the potential safety of the site angle at the College Drive Highway intersection. And I would say, you know, WHKS did exactly what we asked of them. And a lot of that was based on the 2018 visioning document that encouraged a new crosswalk to be placed at that intersection. But, you know, from a safety standpoint, I think it's safer to leave the existing crosswalks as currently configured. And the driveways, conflict points in the residential driveways and the mid-block crossing, I think are a compromise that just will eventually people learn to adapt to that.
Thank you for the answer. Travis, did you want to answer that question too?
You know, I'm in a similar boat as John, where, you know, when we had the initial conversation about what we thought we could do on the north side with squaring that intersection up, and by the intersection, I mean that crosswalk at the intersection there, that in theory, that would have been my preferred, largely because it's one less street crossing, fewer driveway crossings. And when I say one less, you know, if you're a west side resident, and if I remember right, this was part of our conversation, I want to say last November, maybe. We had a work session where we did talk about this intersection briefly, about sending traffic down, cross on the south side of the intersection, then back to the north and picking up 10 feet all the way east along Hively. And we said nobody's going to go down, over, then back up, and then to the east on a 10-foot wide. So we focused on the intersection and getting that crosswalk on the north side modified so that we could make a straight crossing over, when in reality we should have evaluated and weighed the additional driveway crossings and been okay with sending them back to the north side further east down Hively Street. So it's a long and winded answer of saying I do think in practicality the alternative is a better option. In theory, the one crossing on the north side would have been preferred, but it's just not. There's too many obstacles for it.
I really appreciate both of you giving a pretty straightforward answer. Thanks. That really helps me.
How many people will, I mean, I think about where I ride my bike, right? They're going to come from Corey Street down on College and then be on the north side. How many will just ride that 5-foot sidewalk to the 10-foot trail?
And they very well could if they're on the east side
Yeah.
of College Drive as they're coming down across the bridge. I don't know that that's the norm, though. I do think the west side of College is the more heavily bike traffic side.
And there is an RRFB at Quarry Street that they can cross College Drive. But in human nature, you take the most direct route.
Yeah, you try to cross the
on a
fewest
bike,
streets.
It's commonly also the flattest route too.
Yeah. And there aren't any red flags about an 8-foot trail. I mean, it seems small.
8's your minimum.
Okay.
9 is kind of, I don't want to call 9's the preferred, but
10 is what they
10 is-
recommend
yeah.
in the design standards. 8 is what most all of the Trout Run Trail is. When you are, but 10 is a better weighted, a better width, and that's why the 10-foot was selected here for the original design.
And I'm just thinking, because this is a trail that will be heavily biker walker. Trout Run Trail is not biker walker, it's just biker.
There's a lot of runners on Trout Run.
I walk it almost every day.
The whole trail?
Well, parts of it.
Okay.
Oh, there's a lot.
The flat part.
I'm just thinking of the, like, yeah.
I would probably say there's 60% walkers and 40%
How big's Doug Road? That 10?
How many, I'm sorry, what?
Doug Road is 10?
Trout Run Trail on Doug Road.
What's
Yeah.
left of
No,
it?
it's
Yeah.
8 foot.
Probably less. Yeah.
Okay.
I-
I mean, I'm fine with the alternate, I just,
Yeah, I mean, I think that 10-foot recommendation is maybe for more heavily urban areas more appropriate too. You know, like, even if we get active usage of this, it's not gonna often have two-way traffic on every block or anything. People can filter, they can slow down a little bit and say, hey, I gotta get by you. You know, I think it'll work out.
One thing I might just say is that we still potentially could do a 10-foot. What that means is you have a 4-foot grass boulevard and those intakes and so on, that we'd have to take a look at what we've got there relative to right-of-way and other utilities and so on like that. I don't want to promise that. You could take a long, hard look at it at least, though.
I hope we can find some more width there, but even if we don't, I feel like this is a net safety gain and makes it a more usable system. So I hope this is the direction we go.
So time frame wise,
So, John, are you comfortable with accepting bids, negotiating a change order?
I would throw that back at Chase. It's his plan set. And
It's got to stay with you, Chase. You can't send it back.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, Travis, I think that's okay because we're not changing the scope of work really. We're moving some concrete paving from one side of the street to the other. It's not like we're adding entirely, completely new, different bid items. So I think I would be okay with that. You know, hopefully a contractor is willing to work with us. I just took a look at the current plan holders that we have on the project. A lot of local contractors, so you like to think that they're familiar with the city and want to maintain a working relationship. So yeah, I think I'd be okay with that.
it'd be nice to keep that time frame.
Yeah, and largely, I would be interested to see what we get for bids. I do think offering the split build season where they can opt for, you know, it's 40 calendar days of work, but they can do it this fall or next spring. And giving them that option, I think, will result in the best pricing for us.
One more thing I'd like to add is we can always reject the bids as well if we, you know, accept the bids and have some conversations with the contractor and don't have a good feeling about it. It is maybe a worst case scenario, but it is a possibility is to reject it, make the changes, and then bid it again, let's say in the fall.
Okay,
okay.
thank you. Thank you very much for that discussion. And I too appreciate the fact that you listened and, you know, took everybody's consideration for it. I think it's going to be advantageous in the long run.
Yeah, thanks staff for all the hard work, appreciate it.
Agreed, thank you.
Okay, discussion on City Code Section 10.52.170, using streets for storage. Can you give some background on that, Travis?
Yes, so council members have requested discussion on this existing code section. A number of council members have received some comments and concerns about this code section, which requires, or excuse me, it prohibits vehicles from being parked on city street for longer than 48 hours. PD has taken, I think, a handful of calls as of late. However, the enforcement of this is, I don't want to say difficult, but if an individual understands that it can only be there for 48 hours and they move it, they're in compliance with our code. And so that's why it's being on the agenda for discussion.
Does staff have a recommendation of how to change that to
Yeah.
more appropriately
We'd hope there
address
would
the
be a
situation that
sample
we're dealing with
change.
here?
Yeah. So, John and I have talked a bit, Chief Tyne and I, Mike and John as well. So I know there's one thing that I've thought, and it addresses maybe a bigger, I would argue, a safety concern from my standpoint, is trailer parking, unattended trailer parking specifically. So if I drop my boat trailer parked on the street and I don't have it attached to my truck, I've seen instances of this without wheel chocks even being applied, where the reliance is just that gravity and friction is going to hold this trailer from not going anywhere. Well, one nice bump from other traffic, and that trailer is now uncontrolled. So one thing I could see is an ordinance that says you cannot have an unattended trailer parked on a city street. Give a couple of carve-outs, such as a construction trailer with an active building permit or right-of-way work permit, things like that. Certainly wheel chocks must be applied in that scenario, but that's a potential change.
Safety cones?
Safety cones would.
Can you
I would say
require
we
those on
could
a
require
trailer
them.
to put, like, you see some service trucks, they put the cones out when they're parking.
Yep. Yeah, we could. A lot of times those trucks, they put them out. Company I work for actually did as a matter of policy, because it made you go back and pick up the cone before you backed out and you saw what was behind you. But we could do that it has to be coned off or something to that effect. But it's largely on what we're trying to address as part of the code. And the difficulty with this is it can sit there for 48 hours, but if you move it, you're still in compliance with code.
But you're suggesting a code that says no off-street trailer parking on a city street unless there's a permit.
Correct. And so that wouldn't have a time frame
Right.
associated with it. You can't leave it there for a day and a half and then move it and still be compliant. You actually have to leave it attached to a vehicle. And again, the aspect I would argue is that it's a safety consideration.
Sure.
Trailers, unless it's an air brake trailer, it's not like they have brakes themselves.
Would somebody be able to get around that by just leaving their vehicle attached to that trailer and leaving it parked out there and still have the same
They'd have to
issue?
move it with 48 hours.
Right,
The
right.
same still
But
applies.
10 feet ahead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Is what
That's
you,
what I'm,
is what you have in the Dropbox what we have currently?
Correct. Yeah, it's how code reads. It's very short and simple.
I guess that's what I'm afraid of, is that we're gonna play whack-a-mole with this thing, that we're gonna tweak something in the code, and then people are still gonna figure out ways to get around it, and we're gonna then 6 months from now, we'll go back to it and try to figure out another way to deal with it. We're just
Say,
whacking.
don't be a jerk to your neighbors in code.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll say it. So, I think a council member has said this in the past, where sometimes we try and legislate for one issue.
That's right.
And that we need to be careful that we're not trying to legislate to solve one issue.
Right.
The noise ordinance was, I think, a prime example of that, where when we started down that rabbit hole based on trying to address an issue, that it opened up a whole nother can of worms. Now, this one I don't see being to that extent, but are we legislating to address that one issue?
I feel like less with this. I mean, I think the noise ordinance was also an example of just the unintended consequences of trying to have a noise ordinance,
Right.
Because there was, to me, it wasn't about one issue. It was that all the issues that we would then be not allowing, just the extent that we were going to allow exceptions. This seems pretty clear on our exception, like if it's attached to your vehicle or you have a permit, otherwise you can't do it. That's much cleaner than our noise ordinance.
No unattached trailers.
You want to speak?
No unattached trailers, and if they are unattached, you can always check with Greg to see if we got a building permit for that address if it's a construction trailer.
And
So
that
no
should actually,
And so no contractors can just park their trailer in front of their house or somebody else's when they're not working on them.
so As a reminder, a building permit is to be displayed on the outside of the building in a visible location, so you'll know right away if they've got a building permit.
Yeah, but I mean, that would be one way to
Yep.
cross-reference and just any unattached trailer is towed if they don't have the permit, building permits.
John, you're getting nervous over there. Aren't you?
Could we would it make sense to designate the width of the street for that? So there are streets that are wide enough in Decorah that if you were a contractor and you had your trailer out there, you're really not causing any disruption in the flow of traffic. They're really wide streets, and then there are narrow streets where this is the problem. So,
May not just be a case of the width of the street. I'm thinking on our street, on West Main Street there, the entire north side is constantly, it's just full of cars parked there because several people on the south side of the street have no off-street parking. And our neighbor across the street for probably a month left his trailer there full of rock because they were building gardens and things around. But no one had an issue with it because that street is constantly full of vehicles anyway. So whether a trailer sat there or another vehicle sat there, it made no difference to anybody. So
right, that's what I'm wondering, like, it is somewhat street dependent.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I hate to just arbitrarily throw another section of the code in there thinking that's gonna cure every problem when we're gonna have.
Well, I think that the issue that brought it forward is that they are abiding by the way the code is, by moving them, but the way they park, it is a safety concern for people that are driving through that. Is that correct?
Because it's a narrow street.
Yeah. Well, it's actually a pretty wide street, except for you've got all of the vehicles.
A very wide street that gets very little traffic, but it was a problem. I drove up through there.
Yeah.
You had to eat your way through it because they had 3 vehicles.
Yeah.
Which is a safety problem.
Yeah.
Our trailers, I feel like my instinct is to not have a different set of rules for trailers than for cars. You know, if we have no storing cars in the street for more than 48 hours, it feels like that's a natural starting place for the rules that we should have about trailers. Maybe with trailers we could have an addendum because we don't want people storing them in the street permanently and just moving them every 2 days if that's where council's at. Maybe we could say you can't park it on the same block after that 48-hour window's peak. That way we're not just getting people who move it a feet, move the chalk, or move it a foot, move the chalk up and say, hey, I moved it, what are you going to do about it? Could we do something like that instead? I'll say this.
That might be hard in law enforcement to try to enforce. They'd have to keep track of what block they were on.
Well, I think the thing is, in a town like this, I know where the trailer in my neighborhood is. You know what I mean? Like, and if I have an issue with it, well, then I've got some leg to stand on to make a complaint if they're being a bad neighbor. They're not being a bad neighbor. I don't care that they park there. I would never call it in. But, I can imagine situations where I would want to call in something like that. I'll say this. I parked my trailer on the street today for about 4 hours. So I don't know if this is a confession or not. It's sometimes very convenient. It allowed me to shuffle some cars in my driveway and do some work in my carport. I think that we should have that flexibility available for Decorans who pull a trailer instead of who own a truck. I don't want people storing trailers on the street permanently, though. And I feel like if we can come up with some way of accomplishing both of those ends, I'd like to.
Or what about consecutive trailers? Like you can't park, because part of this problem was just in sheer magnitude of the number of trailers, correct? So you can have one trailer per block or something that is less.
I would focus on feet just because block varies.
Sure,
I mean,
feet.
you have some places like the flats where a block is pretty well defined, and then this area, yeah, what's the block? It's almost 3/4 of a mile. But with that, so I think you could do clearly state when you move it within after 48 hours, it has to be moved at least X number of feet, whether that's 100, 200, or whatever 100 feet. I think that's pretty easy to watch. The first in rule, as far as only one trailer per X number of feet, I see that a little bit more hard to enforce and monitor. And who's gonna, they say, one person says, no, I was here first, and the other person says, no, I was.
So what does council think about the move it 250 feet within 48 hours if you're going to park a trailer on our streets? Is that, what do y'all think? Or we could maybe have a shorter time duration for trailers, like let people park them there for 12 hours or something, I don't know.
So I do want to point out, I do see some challenges on an enforcement standpoint from even if it moves 250 feet. If it's within 48 hours that it needs to move 250 feet, a vehicle can leave and come back a lot of times in that 48-hour window. And now for our police officers to try and identify a vehicle that's, you know, has it moved 250 feet in the last 48 hours is going to be very challenging. So enforcement of this is extremely difficult, and that's usually why it is limited to stationary, because you can chalk a tire and see, you know, here's the chalk line on the tire in the street. They line up perfectly. It hasn't moved in 48 hours. Here's your ticket. Now, I myself, when I drive my truck home, I'm going to park it in nearly the same spot I left on a city street when I get home. Chalk line's probably not going to align perfectly with where I originally was parked. That's how the enforcement is currently done. So if you're saying it's got to be at least 250 feet and over a 48-hour period, that coming and going could have happened, and we're not going to know that.
I do think the original idea of saying that it has to be attached to a vehicle makes some amount of sense, because that is a safety issue. And if someone has their truck attached to their trailer, they're probably utilizing that trailer for something on a regular basis, as opposed to just leaving a trailer there, right? So I guess I am inclined to like that.
Could someone direct me to where the trailers are currently causing big problems? Which streets?
Walnut.
One is on Walnut.
Walnut. I guess I just have to go check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe it was just select council members that it was emailed to.
Oh, okay. Because I thought this was about the trailer parked on Ohio Street, and I was like, just drive around it. This isn't hard.
No, this is
They actually had 3 trailers.
Three
parked,
trailers.
and you had to zigzag your way through.
That sounds
Well-
like a good traffic calming device. I feel like we should give them an award.
I don't think so.
on a very steep hill. Yeah.
Why don't we continue
could-
to think about this, but when we're thinking about what you're gonna make it enforce, definitely, you know, work with the police department, how hard this is gonna be to enforce. Now, just with a car, that's different, but if you're gonna be go by how many feet, that could be hard.
That's why I feel like if you,
What?
sorry, your original proposal doesn't.
A trailer does still get treated as a car in that 48-hour scenario. So I want to be clear about that. So they are treated the same. Just if council wants to do something in addition to the 48-hour street storage policy, that was something I wanted to afford.
Yeah, it doesn't specify.
Mm-mm.
No.
It just says any vehicle.
Correct. And so
Yeah,
we
and
just-
I look at it differently as no person shall use the street or area between sidewalk or curb for storage purposes. And then any vehicle so parked and goes on, it's not a vehicle. You know, and that's just my looking at it. Looked at the city code that's why I asked John, what's the definition of vehicle? And tried to look in the city code, there's really no definition of vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not a vehicle and then there's no
Shouldn't be
on-street
parking there.
then you probably shouldn't be parking there.
That's right.
Does it become a vehicle when it's attached to one? Or is it me storing my property that happens to be touching my hitch on my vehicle?
That's my Homer
Yeah.
Simpson backing into the bushes thing, and kind of pointing at the lawyer. But
I kind of agree with him on that.
But if it's by itself, it's not a vehicle, and it should not be parked there. That's just how I
That's why I
would
think that,
arbitrarily look at it
Yep.
and make a decision on that.
I think that ordinance right now is the cleanest and makes the most sense, that it has to be attached to a vehicle in order to be parked on the street.
Yeah.
Unless you have a permit.
About considering the amount of usable, because the problem that they're having is that there's 3 there, and you have to wind around, which cuts into, a percentage of the road. There's issues like that. Often we would run into that with Winnebago Street as well. You'd have two, massive trucks parked and not being able to go through that street there. Is there just like a broad thing that you can't like take up over a certain percentage of each road?
No.
No? Okay.
I don't think so. But I kind of agree with Brent in the fact that, any vehicle is parked, is that a vehicle?
I
Is
I
a
wouldn't
trailer-
personally say that's a
The
vehicle.
trailer or anything, it requires a car to move it, correct?
Cut into
And it's not a vehicle,
That's,
so it shouldn't be parked on the streets.
I think it should be better defined because we're talking about it so much, so we should simply define it, whether or not trailers have the same rules as motor vehicles.
Well, that would be a start.
Yep. But then with that, I think that would be a good opportunity to if that's what the council wants to do, is amend this ordinance to address unattached trailers. Do they have to be attached to a motor vehicle?
Well,
What about, I guess you'd have a building permit if you put a dumpster in a street, so you'd already have a building permit.
yeah.
And a right-of-way right-of-way
Yeah,
permit for that
okay.
as well.
How about if we continue to explore an option? So, you two want to look a little more and
You want
come
us to
back with some other,
Come with some options?
yeah,
Yeah.
come back with some other options?
Yeah.
All right.
That would be good.
What about special permits for people who intend to leave their trailers there? So then you would know how long they were intending on it.
Then that's a parking, then you're parking in the street.
Yeah. Okay, let's just continue the conversation.
If you have a vehicle and you have to park it in your own property.
You
in
mean
the
not a
street.
vehicle?
I mean, not a vehicle, but if you have an item,
An accessory.
park it in your own property.
So I'm just glad to hear that council's all about not expecting the city to store everyone's stuff on streets, and I just want to extend that to cars. I don't think that's our job either. I'm not saying we can't have street parking for cars. I'm just saying
Okay.
we should bring the same logic to that.
I agree. Okay, we continue, have 2 vacancies on the Decorah Human Rights Commission. I did look back, and that vacancy has been in effect since November of 2023, just for your own information. Any other items to come before the council? If not, motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.